of the Fowler Lake District, which will be followed by an annual meeting of the district. The public hearing is now open. A mailing was sent out to residents in the Fowler Lake District who do not live in the city, and the budget notice was published in the city's official newspaper, that's the Oconomowoc Enterprise. There will be a brief presentation of the proposed budget, after which the hearing will open for public comment on the budget. All yours.
Thank you. So you're right, it'll be a brief presentation of the budget because the budget is quite small for this district. What we have in here is the usual dollars that we have every year for the goose roundup, for the aquatic plant management, and a little bit for postage and administration. On top of that, every year for the last few years, we have been putting aside $30,000 in a equipment sinking fund for the weed harvester. If you look at the bottom of that page, you can see that the fund balance for the weed harvester right now is $150,000. The full levy for 2024's budget would be $35,455, which comes to about $4.26 for the average home. And you'll note that the average home in Oconomowoc has gone to $400,000. So this is in comparison to last year, it was $4.52 for an average home. And that's all I have for the budget presentation.
If any individuals are interested in speaking about the budget, please complete a little blue card. They're right up here in the front. And then those blue cards you can hand to any of the officials here. They'll bring them up to me. You can come to the podium, share your views or your thoughts on the current budget at this time. So does anybody have any comments they would like to make? With no comments being heard from the public or anyone within the Lake District, the public hearing is now closed. I'm officially calling to order the Fowler Lake District annual meeting in order to ask if appropriate meeting notification has been made.
Yes, Your Honor, it has.
As stated previously, any elector, property owner living in the Fowler Lake District may participate in this meeting. I'd like to entertain a motion for approval of the minutes for August 16th of last year, 2022. You may voice your vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
I didn't hear a motion.
Oh, I need a
Motion to
motion.
approve the minutes.
Second.
Second by
Thank you.
Ellis. Any further comments from anybody in the public or anyone here on council? Without hearing so, if you would please vote by saying aye. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Audience, you can vote as well. Anyone opposed? So we're not hearing any opposition to the approval of the minutes for last year. Staff reports. Are there any staff reports? Mr. Herzog.
All right, thank you.
For our residents, this is Jason Herzog from the Public Works, and he's new to us in this past year. And welcome, Jason, and thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mayor and everybody. Yes, yeah, I'm Jason Herzog and definitely new to the city. Working for the city, but not new to the city, so I've been on Fowler Lake many times and been a part of that, so this is a very familiar lake to me, but I do want to provide a few updates for the lake and the management in which we've done for a number of years, and especially this past year. So just to bring you up to speed, the city is responsible in this management to obtain a permit to cut each of the plants. So we are in the process or have applied for the 2023 to 28 permit for that. And inside of the permit, there was a condition to conduct and update our aquatic plant management plan. That was brought up last year. Many were made aware of it. In fact, we even applied for a grant through the DNR and the Aquatic Plant Invasive Species Grant, and were awarded the grant. It was around a $7,000 endeavor that was performed by SEWRPAC, Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. That was conducted last July, and what that consists of is a couple individuals on their staff, meeting with our staff out on the lake. They have a very regimented sampling process. I will post the entire finding and report that was submitted to the city on our city website, and can share that link so that all can see that. And I'll just give you a quick look at that. But what we're really looking for is just a couple of highlights. It's a very detailed and very intense report. This is very similar to one that was conducted in 2018. There is a nice comparison in some of those charts that they do provide inside the report. I'll try to give you a few of the highlights, as some may be aware, but there are, I would say, at least 3 primary weeds in the lake that are of big focus. They're a big contributor to what our operations are really needed inside of there. So that was kind of what I wanted to really focus on. How are we doing? Where does that go? It's a very tough comparison to look at, because obviously every year is different from year to year, as you are totally dependent on Mother Nature, the water levels, amount of sun, sources that come in that are contributing to our lake, and even the upstream portions of that. So just keep that in mind. A couple of the bigger contributors of our aquatic plants are the milfoil, and I guess you could refer to another one as eelgrass, which is the real stringy stuff that catches on your fishing line or your other equipment, boat docks, piers, posts. It not only grows in the essence of maybe 15 feet from the bottom up, but it also releases. And I think if you have some photos there that were submitted earlier today and printed for your benefit there, that would be an eelgrass plant. So yes, that floats in the water, it's released, and that is a lot of what our plant and our harvesting operations are focused on, that and the milfoil. So the sample inside of there is suggesting that on the day in the year that they looked at these, and from 2018 to 2022, it's slightly less, but obviously it's an observation type thing on a grid system. So are you seeing something more over here? Possibly. There's a nice detailed map inside of here that can give you a few of the points. I mean, these are some of the graphs that the lake is broken down into, and can really give you a better idea visually on some of the plants that are put out there and how they collect it. It's a nice detailed report. Again, this was supported by sewer PAC to offset some of the cost, and that's how you saw some of that in our budget. So to date, we usually average on our harvesting operation, we usually average about 1,200 to 1,300 cubic yards of aquatic plants. I would say we're right at that right now as we speak in August. In fact, I believe we're a little bit above that. So even though the lake has been, I would call it clear, and in fact, in the report last year, there are numerous comments on the clarity of the water, and they do have a measurement and a tool that will provide some support for that. And so that's kind of the report that was delivered to us. This is a condition inside of our permit that's necessary to update and to review. Inside of that, they do provide a few recommendations on some of these, and I'm just going to bring up a quick map that will kind of give us a better look of how we, not new recommendation, but this graph here is color-coded. It's tough to read, but I'll quickly try to reiterate some of their main focus on there. Is this map is broken down onto basically what we can harvest and what we can't harvest, and what conditions are inside of that. And this is what controls what our operations can do and can't do, and to what degree. So there's some conditions inside of this. So this kind of brings out some of those, depending on where the photo was taken there on your table there, that could have been in one of the areas that are prohibited from our harvester going into, or it might be just part of how fast something grows. So part of this harvesting operation, there's language inside of this report that also says the same thing, as we do have crew devoted to kind of making a rotation around the lake, asking any riparian owners to collect any of the loose material, loose plants, and place them at the edge of their dock, and our crew will pick them up. So that's some of the overview of the operation on the management of it. I would say the guys feel maybe about 50% of the owners partake in helping along the shoreline, as our harvester is not able to get in the very shallow areas or permitted to cut in those. So also part of our budget is the goose roundup. There is $5,000 inside of that item. Just to give you some background on the goose roundup, this is managed through our Fish and Wildlife, and I had to look this up, but we have not requested any goose to be round up since 2018. And the conditions and the reason for that is that there has to be at least 35 geese present before we can acknowledge and request them to come pick them up. Now, are there 35 geese on the lake? Possibly. Definitely trying to, get them to when they might show up, and still be 35 geese on the lake is another tough part, and as it is a very seasonal timing on which they will collect these in their non-flight part of their cycle.
Alderman Rosa, or Alderman Mulder, you had a question?
Yeah, I have a couple questions about the map here. Last year, we had quite a bit of discussion around the cutting depth. And because I think what has happened in the past is that by the time you cut to, that it's right back up before it could be cut again. So if I'm reading this correctly, in the purplish areas, that's where it's cut to 2 feet above the lake bottom, so you're taking 3 feet. And then in the green areas, you're cutting to just 2 feet above the lake bottom, where the ski patrol or the ski show goes. So that center area is cut
Yes.
to 2 feet.
Okay, so there's a couple of conditions, and you might be right, I'm just missing your colors here, but, so here's the primary boating access lanes. So those would be 30-foot wide and up in a 5-foot depth, but you have to leave the 2 feet at the bottom. So yes, if you're in 5 feet of depth, you can cut 3 feet, right? And you said purple?
Yeah, and then the purple cut to, again, 2 feet above the lake bottom.
Harvest up to 3-foot depth, yes. With a 2-foot bottom.
Center green area, the color didn't seem to really match, but I'm guessing that center green area, that's the ski show path? That's that recreational boating area?
Yeah, you can go deeper with the cut with a 1-foot.
Because those depths are not consistent with what I remember hearing last year, that we were cutting just 2 feet below the surface of the lake. So is this the same policy we've always had, or is this?
This is the
new?
same one, yeah.
This is the same one.
Has anything in this map changed from when it was done previously?
Not much, no.
Mark,
If
am I
any.
remembering anything?
I remember that you did that, but I'm just looking to see, I know that for the longest time, they were always talking about this top cut method that was only let us go a couple feet down below the surface.
I think that's, what we got
That's what
misconstrued on.
that's what I'm.
That's what I
saying.
remember,
This-
too.
This makes it seem like we can cut down to 2 feet, which would provide a lot of surface area for, put the weeds below the, you know,
The draft of the boat.
However, then we come across a harvesting challenge, because if we're cutting down more, then you have to harvest more, and we're still dealing with the eelgrass and stuff that releases on its own.
Correct. You won't eliminate that by the depth of it.
Right.
Yeah, there's certain areas that continue that you cannot cut in. You can collect by hand on those along the shoreline.
Alderman Ellis?
Yeah, on the other side of the bridge where the teal, I guess that's teal, yeah, that, I had the question last year, and I'll ask it again. You can pretty much walk on water there. I mean, it is so
There's an
shallow.
old swamp, yeah.
Yeah, so, are we doing anything about that? Is it just gonna stay that way? What's going on?
Well, they won't permit us to cut over there.
Why?
Their conditions right here are pretty clear and have been firm for as long as I've seen in these depths, in these areas.
I imagine you have a lot of breeding grounds over there for fowl and frogs and turtles and, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the ecology of the lake itself is dependent upon majority of this, as it not only supports a recreational life, but also much more than that.
So the fact that that one area there is maybe a foot deep
Right.
doesn't concern us at all? We're not going to have any issues with that and the runoff or the flow or anything along those lines?
Like from a sediment standpoint, or?
Correct, for any purpose.
I have not seen any conditions over here that I would be worried about. We have some storm discharge on each of the ends here. The depth over here is very restrictive.
Right, I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, I can walk on it and not even get wet. It's that shallow at this point.
Yeah, not only here, yeah, I mean,
Yes.
yeah.
Without objection, I would like to, we have 2 blue cards that were presented to me. I'd like to give a couple of the residents an opportunity to chat and then bring you back. So if you can leave up that map, that might also be helpful. So we have Roger and Mary Lou Pagankoff. If you'd like to come up and share your questions that you have with regarding the weeds. One or both?
I'm the talker. I'm Mary Lou Pagankoff, and I'll get to know you real well, because I would like to invite you to come over. I live on the end of Grove Street, which goes right into LaBelle Cemetery. Right now, there is so much rice grass that I feel like I want to get a mower out there. That needs to be, let me know what we can do, because I'm losing. I mean, even if I tried to get my kayak out, could I? I probably could if I had to. But this is the worst it's ever been. We've been there for 52 years. We have had the harvester come down by us years ago. And I understand the water's very low right now. I understand that. But can they get down? You bet they can. If they really tried, they could get down there, and they're not going to get. It's on a paddle wheel. It is what it is. But again, we've been there all this time. You have tons of people that are renting kayaks that are coming from the lake and coming down the river, going up
Yes.
all the way down. Well, and it's beautiful. But it's going to get to a point, and I understand there's lots of lily pads also, which is unfortunate, but these people are really enjoying a good time, and it's going to get to the point where it's going to get very tight for them to get through. Now, on our side is the original river. On the cemetery side is a man-made river, and that's where it gets a lot more of the traffic, obviously. So goose roundup, come on down. We got lots of geese. And I know what you're talking about. you go up into the cemetery and you got to watch where you're walking. So I would appreciate, again, you're invited. You've got the Festival of the Arts coming this weekend. There's been years down the road where that has smelled so bad that it's embarrassing. People out of town, they're parking up in the cemetery when it gets to that point that they can't find another place to park. So I'm just saying, if there's anything that can be done, or if it can be, I know there's stuff out there that you can spray. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to be caught doing it. But I know there is something that can be used, so I would appreciate any input, and thank you for your time.
Oh, and thank
Been a
you
long
for
time
coming.
since I've
We'll
been.
definitely look into it. Next one is from Marilyn Olson.
Marilyn Olson, 333 North Lake Road, apartment 602. We've been on the lake over 30 years. I've lived full-time on the lake over 5. And the weeds are out of control. They used to cut the weeds at a deeper depth, and then a number of years ago, Mr. Fry, will verify that they changed and that it's cut at the 2 feet, except for the water ski channel. And so, of course, one of my first questions is, why does the water ski show have preference over the boat users on Fowler Lake, the boat residents on Fowler Lake, where we are? I'm on the lake 3 to 4 times a week, multiplied, times 3-4 months. They're on the lake 7 times a summer. And so one question I pose is, why do they have such priority? And somebody asked if the water ski channel was that whole green. I don't think so, because the weed cutter, and Tom is fabulous on the lake. He knows the lake better than anybody. I'm disappointed that he's not here, because where is he? The water ski channel is in front of Fowler Park, where the water ski show is. And I'm not sure that 5 feet gets cut all the way around the lake, as someone had indicated, the green on there. So I'm just going to go back to I came to this meeting in 2001, and taken directly out of the minutes for that meeting, I asked if staff had ever approached the DNR about a compromise on the cutting depth of the weeds. And Mr. Fry stated that staff would approach the DNR again. Last year I came, again, asked why the water ski show has priority, and has anyone ever approached the DNR? The desired outcome is a compromise between the way it used to be and 2 feet. And the answer last year was, we will address that issue after the aquatic plan management. Okay, that's been done now. So now, where are we at? Has anyone approached the DNR on a compromise of the depth cut, the weed depth cut on Fowler Lake? I would like to know who's advocating for the lake users, ways to influence DNR. Does the city have influence? Do you want petitions? Do you want us to collect petitions, signatures on a petition? I asked last year, how can we influence the DNR to get their attention? By the end of the summer, by the way, that's my prop. I thought after last year's annual meeting I would bring a prop this year. No pun intended. So there's the prop on my boat, and I avoid the weedy areas of the lake. I know where the weeds are, and I stay out of them. And that's what my prop looks like after one spin around the lake. So would you like to know how many times I'm bringing my motor up? I'm either going backwards and discharging them, or I end up pulling them around, especially this eelgrass now where it's like string around the prop. So here I am. Same questions. Let's see where we can go on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jason, do you want to come back up? Anything more you want to add to the report or your staff report to council? I do not have any more blue cards for comments from anyone, so we'll keep moving forward. Thank you, Jason. We're in the Fowler Lake District meeting, not in the city council meeting. No problem. Alderman Mulder?
So I guess I don't think I know the answer to this. From what I'm reading here, we can cut to a depth of, so that the weeds are only 2 or 3 feet off the bottom, but we're only cutting it right now 24 inches below. Tom, do you? 3 feet down. 3 feet off the top, leaving 2 feet off the bottom. Okay.
And we've been doing that for, yeah.
Okay.
We have not changed from what I've understood.
And so in other areas where it says that we could cut 6 or 7 feet, do we do that as well, or we cut 3 feet universally across?
In those areas, off the bottom,
Yep.
in the green area, cutter only goes down 5 feet. I'm hitting bottom a lot of times.
Okay.
This year, I had to come up, so I was cutting probably maybe 4.
So is there anything you think we should be doing different to control the weeds that we're not? More cutting time, different equipment?
Out there 5 days a week, 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
Grass outroots itself, so outroots and makes a big bog. Sometimes it's not that big of a bog, sometimes it is. Sometimes it's suspended in between where it's top and where the top of the water is. So it kind of just uproots and then kind of just pulls itself to the top. And it's kind of coming down at an angle. Go through there, you rip it up, and you leave. Anyway, when I cut through, I gotta make at least 10 casts. Without cutting it all.
Right.
Alderman Spiegelberg?
So again, it's like, all right, what can we do? It sounds like the issue is really that we need to harvest more of these weeds and get more of these out. I mean, if we're kind of abiding by what we can do as far as the depths of
Yeah,
cutting,
So I mean, I
the
just went
abundance
through,
of weeds that are not getting harvested, and I mean, obviously, Tom's doing a great job, but what is the solution to this?
well, I guess the decision on what's acceptable within inside of our permit would be the answer. But we've also increased some of the services over the years with the collection, not only with the owners along the shoreline. We have staff that will come around the point right there by the swim area where it collects. They'll get in the water, they'll corral
They
all
do,
of
and
the
I've seen
loose
them.
material, because the harvester can't get in there, and push it out, and he can pick it up. So I think operations like that are still, very viable to look at opportunities to try to collect as much as we can. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a confirmation of what is permittable here.
I understand the permittable part, but what about harvesting more? I'm assuming there's not a permit that says you can only harvest to a certain degree or a certain, getting them out of the lake.
Yeah, so like Tom said, he's collecting, we have a window from basically June 1st to September 15th of being able to cut and harvest, outside of adding another cutter.
Is the harvester separate? I mean, I don't think we have an issue right now, basically, with the cutting and where we're at. It's getting what's being released naturally and what's being cut out in a greater abundance.
We can review what's really necessary to, I gotta understand better what's the difference from what everybody wants from what we can really provide.
Yeah, no,
Is truly the
I
truly the
understand
answer.
that part of it.
Alderman Maroney?
Yeah, what about you said the timeline that we have to actually cut? Why do we have to adhere to that timeline in the given calendar year?
That's our permit conditions.
Okay. Would it help if we were able to try and figure out a way to expand that?
I don't think so.
No?
Well, the issue is the plants are not growing prior to June 1st, and they're pretty much have released, and, I mean, our operations really go down after Labor Day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Yes. Can you please come up to the podium?
If they can cut 5 feet down for the water ski show, why can't they cut 5 feet down for all boat users on the lake?
So the 5 feet down isn't particular to the water ski show. It's actually labeled as recreational boating lanes. Correct. So this gets the boats from the boat launch area out towards the middle of the lake. So we have 2 lanes that we can cut that depth for the boats to get out to the middle of the lake. And it's recreational boating.
And then once we get out to the middle of the lake, you know, the lake is small to start with, and
Yeah,
then the
so-
weeds just shrink it so
so
that by
one-
this time of the year, there's just a tiny little circle in the middle that's deep enough to stay out of the weeds.
And that's the blue circle that you're seeing.
That's
And-
exactly what it is.
Well, and then that lighter green area, that's the area that they can cut to 5-foot depth, leaving 1 foot from the bottom, or up to a 6-foot depth, leaving 1 foot from the bottom. As Tom mentioned, he was hitting bottom at 5 feet this year. So, that's what's in our permit for cutting.
I mean, can I,
Yeah, Alderman Rozak?
I mean, Fowler Lake's not really a lake, right? It was a river that was dammed up in a marsh originally. So we're holding back nature every time we cut and herbicide and whatever we're doing. So it's never gonna be a perfect solution because it wasn't designed by our good Lord to be a lake, and we turned it into a lake, and it's not deep. So it makes sense to me. This is what the DNR rules say we can cut and where we can cut, so.
Alderman Shell Pepper?
I'm not on Fowler Lake Management District member. Can I speak?
You are because you can on council.
Okay.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
I object.
Yeah. okay.
He's a Lac LaBelle. He's a LaBelle.
I just wanted to get clarification on when was this plan approved last, this mapping? Could you say that again?
So 2018 was the last report,
Okay, and how often are the reports?
every 5 years.
Okay, so we're up for one right now.
This is it.
Well, This is it. Okay, it says 2023, that's right.
This is the
Okay, so
current-
what did we do to advocate then for ourselves and when they're putting this map on? And you're saying this map is the exact same one from 2018? It
I
didn't
wish I
change?
could fully say this, but I want, you know, this area here is driven by contours and plants, what I have a feeling. I don't know that for sure, but I think that's how they come up with this, with the boat and then the cut in to try to get the boats through these navigational areas.
Yeah, I mean, because if this map is what dictates everything we can do, it sounds like, you know, we kind of are kind of late to the game. We should have been, you know, influencing this while
This
this
was
map
done
was being
prior to
created.
your meeting last year.
Well, whenever it was done,
Yeah.
it seems like this is the document that guides what we're allowed and what we're not allowed to do, and, you know. So we're in a tough situation now because of it.
So we have requested to be able to cut deeper in order to keep
It's
the
more
material
than a
down.
Request, though, it's,
Pardon?
I think it's gotta be more than just the
Oh,
asking.
End of the day, the DNR controls the permit.
Yeah,
We can
right.
ask,
No.
and if they go out there and they look and they say, based on these plant species,
Right.
this is what we want you to do.
They're also just like, you know, the kind of faceless bureaucrats that have been appointed up there dictating to our city and community how we're gonna, you know, do our operations. So
Well-
I think we gotta just work hard to, you know, advocate for ourselves. That's all I'm saying.
Well, can I ask a question? Mayor? What, how much extra does the city through levies spend? I mean, this Fowler Lake Rehabilitation District budget is pathetically small. What do we spend for the city, on the city levy, and the city tax money for all the other work we do? I mean, 35 grand is not covering him cutting for 5 days a week.
No.
All summer. So what do we, I know we talked about this a few years ago. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars we're spending on the harvesters. and-
70 to 80?
70 to 80 only? What about on the harvesters? And repairs and maintenance for the harvesters and all that? Don't know.
I would have to
Okay.
calculate that.
So I mean, the more,
Harvester comes out of that 38,000.
That's the
No, no, no,
acquisition cost.
No, so,
A
so
future
the
one.
third,
That's
So,
what I meant.
yeah,
We're
so-
purchasing the next.
yeah,
Well,
that's to build up the fund to
a
purchase
few years ago,
another.
we didn't have all the money for the harvester. We still had to take money out of the general fund to do that.
So the maintenance of the equipment's in there, but a few years ago, we had completely gone through and had everything completely rebuilt.
Right.
And this is when we found out what the cost was, and we completely rebuilt everything with a 10-year plan to build up at $30,000 a year to get $300,000 into a fund, so that when we go to replace the equipment, we're hopefully would be getting some grants you know, to offset that cost, but we would have a good start on that. So that's what that 30,000 is. And that's why we're not seeing an overly big abundance of maintenance costs, is that we just had everything rebuilt.
Any other questions for Mr. Herzog?
Tom had a comment.
I'm sorry, I didn't see Tom.
Can you come up to
Come
the,
up to the podium, Tom. We'd love to have your comments. You're the man on the machine
Okay,
that keeps filling up my yard across from my house.
okay, now, some
They don't pay
clarifications
me.
here. The pink area there on the map is more of a shallow area. What the DNR wants with all that area there is that 3-foot depth down, mostly because of milfoil. You cut the milfoil at that depth, and native plants take over and knock out the milfoil. On the far north end of the lake, it's pretty well good with milfoil. I mean, there's always going to be something there, but when I started cutting, it was packed. I couldn't get across there most of the time. I had to make channels to people's piers so that they could get out. So now the north end is good. The area by the boardwalk and stuff, that little nook in, that area is pretty good too with milfoil. There's a lot over by your house yet, sorry. But we're working on it, and hopefully we'll get that as nice as the other areas. I do cut a little bit more than, I cut that straight across and straight up for the green area. For the 5-foot, I don't have that little horseshoe there and stuff, but right now there's a lot of spots that eelgrass is coming up. That is a native grass, a native plant, I should say, and it is making it very difficult to keep up. Today, I mostly cleaned up, because yesterday we were on and the weekend we weren't on, but there was 3 loads of just floaters that I took out of there. So that takes up most of my time instead of cutting. I maybe had an hour of cutting today, if that, and most of the time was cleaning up just the floaters that were all over the lake. So that's the worst part with the eelgrass.
How would you compare this year to last year? Better, worse, the same,
Similar,
similar?
very similar.
Okay.
Because the eelgrass started ripping up a little bit earlier, but other than that, it's real similar.
Okay, okay.
That's what I,
Any questions from council or from the audience? Alderman Maroney.
How would you compare it to the last 5 to 10 years this year?
eelgrass is starting to get a little bit more aggressive and taking over. So when it starts uprooting, it's worse. Earlier in the year, it was actually really good. I didn't have a guy with me sometimes just because they had nothing to do. You know, I'd be cutting and getting some, but the stuff that was on shorelines that they'd be picking up, there wasn't any. So early in the year, it was really, really nice, but now we're busy and we can't keep up. It just overtakes us in the last couple of years.
Thank you. Any other comments from anyone within the Lake District? Yes. Could you please come up to the podium? I'm sorry, that way we make sure everyone can hear. If you just state your name, please.
My name is Sharon Savage. I noticed on the next page, it talks about chemicals being used in the lake. Does that impact these weeds that you're trying to cut down, and to what degree?
All the DNR would do for chemicals would be the milfoil. Eelgrass is not invasive, so they won't use chemicals on eelgrass.
Okay, but are you using chemicals at all in this area?
We're not using chemicals at all on the lake.
Okay, because I was kind of wondering why that was a third item on the next page. Okay.
Thank you.
They do address it, as they are addressing all of the methods. And I'll just give this to you and you can read more details, but I think The telling piece in this is that they do suggest that chemical treatment for these plants is an option. And this one's around private piers. But they also suggest that there are several drawbacks to the chemical treatments. I've dealt with the DNR on other rivers, and they are very heavily protective of this chemical treatment. As you can see, they have their conditions inside of this for the permitting for chemical treatments, and they specifically say which ones they can be for. Here, this treatment has several drawbacks and should be considered under exceptional circumstances. So yes, they do address it, but I don't feel like they're very supportive of it.
Is there any possibility that there are people with piers who are using that just to help keep their area a little bit more clear so they can get in
I
and
haven't
out?
seen anybody, but I don't know who you want to say.
I would think that there are, just because of when I come across stuff and see a clear area that's kind of just in one spot, it kind of looks like it, but that could also be ground that isn't taking any nutrients to make plants. I mean, there's that big area, the point for swimming, and then straight out from Fowler Park there, after the swim point, there's another round, big area that has nothing in it. I mean, it's a clear area. It's actually a really nice area to be in.
Have you looked into why that area stays clearer than the others? And maybe you can, you know.
It's the ground.
It's just the ground?
It's just the ground that won't
Have you-
habitat.
Have you analyzed the ground then?
Yes, they do. And our clarity, I think last week was 17 feet. So I can see a disc that's 8 inches in diameter, 17 feet down. In the 50-foot spot.
All right, thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate the update, Jason.
Yep.
And we'll move on to our next item, item 4. I'd like to entertain a motion for the adoption of the 2024 budget.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions? This will be a voice vote. Again, all the people that live in the Lake District, you are allowed to vote. All in favor? Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye. Nay.
Nay.
One opposed. Two opposed. On to our next item is may I have a motion to set the 2023 tax levy? Lori?
Sure. So the tax levy would be set at $35,455. That translates to just over a penny per $1,000 in value, or about $4.26 on an average home.
Would anyone like to make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussions or comments? We'll have another voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All of those opposed? And that moves forward. Thank you. Next is set the meeting date. May I have a motion to set the 2024 Fowler Lake Rehabilitation and Protection public hearing and meeting for the second council meeting in June 2020, August
August 20th.
20th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
There's another item, Mayor.
Oh, okay, yeah. I have 2 agendas here, so I apologize. Number 7, is there any other business that may be properly come before this body?
Well,
Alderman Rozak.
I'm going to make the comments I've been making for 10 years straight, is that we need to look into dissolving this district. So next year, per WISTAT 33.35, I will be making the formal petition for dissolution. The budget is tiny, it's minuscule. I think what we've demonstrated tonight, this is a very inefficient process. This entire district is an anachronism. These districts make sense in LaBelle because it's multi-jurisdictional, so the district is actually controlled by the town, LaBelle, and the city. Here, it's all the people in the city. So literally, the commissioners can be anybody that pays the tax, which is 95% of the public anyway. So I'm going to make that formal petition after the meeting, probably next week, and then it can be discussed at the next annual meeting in August 20th of 2024.
Sounds good. Any other business? I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you all for coming, and we did hear you. We'll just take a breather to get to our other computer platform, and then we'll start the City Common Council meeting here in about 1 minute. I'd like to call to order the City of Oconomowoc Common Council meeting for Tuesday, August 15, 2023. Has appropriate meeting notification been made?
Yes, Your Honor, it has.
If you would all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you and welcome everyone. Sorry we got a little bit of a late start. Would you call roll, please?
Alderman Rozak.
Here.
Alderman Altman-Cloth. Here. Alderman Ellis.
Here.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Here.
Alderman Mulder.
Here.
Alderman Shellpepper.
Here.
Alderman Maroney.
Here.
Alderman Bliss.
I'd like to open the public hearing, amend Chapter 20 floodplain zoning. The purpose of this hearing is to hear public comment on the amendment of Chapter 20 of the Municipal Code pertaining to floodplain zoning. The text amendment incorporates the most current flood insurance rate maps and flood insurance study for Waukesha County, creates additional standards related to non-conforming uses located in the floodplain, and incorporates additional flood-proofing standards and adds standards applicable to all floodplain districts. The amendment would keep the city floodplain ordinance in compliance with FEMA and other DNR regulations. Mr. Gallo.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll give a brief presentation on this text amendment. We're changing the entire chapter regarding the floodplain ordinance of the municipal code. I'll give a little history on this. So why are we doing this? Back on April 19th of this year, we received a letter from FEMA stating that we are required as a community to change our floodplain ordinance to some updated standards. If we do not, we would be suspended from the National Flood Insurance Program. They gave us until October 19th of this year. It sounds like a long time out, but it has to go through this body. It has to be published in the paper. We have to send it to them. They have to review it, and then it's all of that has to happen before October 19th. So this was the letter that was sent to us from FEMA back in July, stating it went to the mayor, confirming that we had until October 19th. So what are the changes in the code? They added some additional standards related to non-conforming structures that are in the floodplain, that type of thing. They incorporated updated flood insurance rate maps, firms. We received copies of all those firms. We did have a chance to look at them and see what structures they added or took out of the floodplain. And then they added some additional flood-proofing standards. In your packets are both a clean copy of the code as well as the red line version. We tried our best to merge two documents together. It was a little clunky, but we did the best we could to kind of show you what the changes were. We did send off the updates to our local representative from the DNR, and she did send an email to Rachel saying that I consider it ready to go for your upcoming Plan Commission and Common Council agendas. There was a few comments that she had related to something called Act 175. I'll show you that on the next slide. But she said whether in or out, the ordinance would meet the minimum state and federal standards. We chose to keep Act 175 in. It allows modifications and improvements to any non-conforming structures to exceed a state 50% rebuild rule. So we figured that was more lenient for people that have those structures.
I mean, can you explain that a little bit? What that means, the 50-50 rule, 50% rule?
Yeah, if it's damaged, structural changes exceed 50%, you are not allowed to rebuild it.
Of the assessed value.
Right, but if we keep this in, somebody could have damages that exceed that to a non-conforming
Yes.
building and still rebuild them.
So as I said earlier, we did look at the new firm maps, and this is an example of one area in the city. The area up here with the reddish color, that's the 1% chance, or otherwise known as the 100-year flood. That's what banks and lending institutions and title companies look at. This other pattern down here, this more grayed out color, that's the 0.2%, that's the flood fringe. It's the 500-year flood event. So you can see there are structures within the city that are in the flood fringe, but we try to keep everything out of the floodway there, the floodplain 100-year. We did check the whole city. I mean, the hut down on City Beach is in the floodplain. There's playgrounds, there's some sheds, and there's just maybe a few handfuls of homes where the red line just touches the edge of the structure. So there are some areas in the city that have floodplain. So we did send this to the Plan Commission in advance, and on August 2nd, they reviewed it. They made a recommendation. One of the commissioners, Commissioner Frederick, he had a lot of minor little changes. He added like, instead of floodplain administrator, he painted zoning administrator. So he had, but a couple significant changes that we sent to the DNR, and they sent back saying, we'd really like our model ordinance language. And I'll just go through those so you know what it is. There was one about process of Board of Appeals on page 32. We added this under 7.04. And then on page 38, there was definitions of a historic structure. We initially took this out, this last piece. We thought we would control it by our local historic, and they asked that it be put back in. We were a bit confused by the language of the Secretary of the Interior or the Secretary of the Interior in states without approved programs, but they really wanted to see that in there. So if that's what it took, okay. I put it back in, and I sent the updated draft to the DNR, and I have not heard back yet, but it's the model stuff that they asked us to do. So again, just to go refresh your time frame, we handed this out to you as early as we could I believe in July. The Plan Commission made a recommendation on August 2nd. Today is August 15th. We're asking on the agenda for action and potentially waiving the second reading. We would then publish it August 24th. We would submit it for and final document for DNR review is due by the 19th, so we're giving them plenty of time. And then the ordinance takes effect on the 19th, 1 month later. So the recommendation is to approve the ordinance that's before you, amending this chapter 20 floodplain ordinance subject to the two changes that I showed you tonight, pages 32 and 38, as presented, and then waive the second reading. This is a public hearing. I'll be available to answer additional questions later in the meeting.
Does anyone in the public want to comment on this public hearing of the amended floodplain zoning? I do not have any blue cards. There hasn't been a submission. Are there any comments for this public hearing on this topic? With nothing being said, we will now close the public hearing and move on to the approval of minutes. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve minutes of August 1st, 2023.
So moved, Rosick.
Second, Altman Cloth.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next up, comments or suggestions from the citizens. If you would like to make a comment, there are blue cards out here. We do have two presentations and updates, a presentation and update, and then we will hear the comments from the community at that time after that. So it's my honor to introduce Jordan Haney. Jordan is going to share with the council and the community the Distinguished Young Women's of Oconomowoc presentation. Welcome, Jordan. We'll get you queued up and ready to go.
Just press the arrow? Yep. Awesome. Alrighty, hi everybody. As Mayor Magnus said, I'm Jordan Haney, and I'm the Distinguished Young Woman of Oconomowoc for the class of 2024. Distinguished Young Woman, formerly known as the Junior Miss Program, is a unique scholarship opportunity. It's a national scholarship program that uniquely combines the opportunity to earn college scholarships through professional development skills, learning life skills to empower young women for life outside of high school. So I was graciously brought this opportunity through my clarinet teacher. She made it aware. We get scored on 5 components, which is scholarship, interview, scholastics, self-expression, and talent. And I thought it would be a fun opportunity. So in July, I went and I competed at an at-large program, which basically means any girl that doesn't have a program in their town can go and compete for the opportunity to move on to State Week. I ended up scoring really well, and August 9th through the 12th of this past week, I competed at State Week. I ended up earning over $4,000 in scholarships, winning the overall talent competition, the overall self-expression competition, earning the Spirit Award, which coolly enough was voted on by my peers, and I won second runner-up overall. I wanted to talk about my experience and hopefully bring more awareness about this organization to the community because I'm the first ever person from Oconomowoc to participate in this organization, and I do not want to be the last.
Before you continue, let's give her a round of applause. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. So this is a picture of my families before they dropped us off for the week. We had our phones taken away. I only got my phone for a few hours at night. So we were completely immersed in this little bubble for the experience. I can confidently say that I am not the same girl that is pictured in that picture. I am completely different. I've learned so much with this opportunity, and I want to make sure other girls in our community have the opportunity to grow in a similar way. We met with so many amazing people that empowered us and sponsors. So this was Anna, and I met her and she talked about her job and she empowered us through conversation. It was very interesting to learn from her. I met so many amazing young girls and I've made lifelong friendships through this organization. It's definitely a sisterhood and it was a great opportunity. We competed in a fitness routine. Here's some pictures of us preparing for that. We had like hours of rehearsals. That's probably the most difficult part, but that's oddly my favorite part. So I had a lot of fun doing this. And this was my host family. That was one of my favorite parts, was that we got to stay with a host family that is Mr. and Mrs. Crosby, and they generously opened up their home for us, and we stayed with them, and they offered me their master bedroom, which was very cool, and I enjoyed that a lot. But yeah, Distinguished Young Woman is an amazing opportunity, and I've met so many friends. And I would love to establish maybe a $500 scholarship for the next Distinguished Young Woman of Oconomowoc, because if girls in our community learn about this program and there's already a scholarship in place, they're more likely to join. Along with that, if we do that, I would like to establish possibly an Oconomowoc chapter or a Greater Lake Country chapter because the opportunity would be more local. I had to drive all the way out to Franklin to participate. It is completely free. It's a great experience. And even if you don't move on to State Week, it's just an incredible way to grow and to gain those leadership opportunities. So basically, that is why I'm here to talk today, to talk about my experience. And if you'd like to contact me to talk anymore, me and State Chairperson Meg Saransky would love to establish a chapter in Oconomowoc to gain more scholarships, and we need trying to think of the word, we need people to donate money for the scholarships. Sorry, I've been rambling on, but I really appreciate you listening to me today, and if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out, and hopefully we can establish an Oconomowoc chapter, because again, I just want to be the pioneer for this program. I do not want to be the last Distinguished Young Woman of Oconomowoc. Thank you so much for your time.
One moment. Alderman Spiegelberg, you want to make a comment?
Congratulations. I was
Thank
so
you.
excited that you were going to be here tonight because
Thank you.
distinguished young women is near and dear to our family's heart.
Oh, that's
All
awesome.
three of my daughters were distinguished young women for New Berlin, selected for New Berlin, and competed at state and did very well with the scholarships as well. So I was so excited to meet you. And as Jordan said, Distinguished Young Women was formerly known as Junior Miss, which many of you will recognize. And there have been many amazing people that have gone on to be Junior Miss from the past. As a matter of fact, Diane Sawyer was a Junior Miss from the past. So I just wanted to congratulate you again. I did a little bit of creeping on the Facebook and some of the website today, and I saw that you did very well in clarinet, and I think that's great.
Thank you.
And I think it's great that you want to form a chapter here. If you want any help with that too, I'd love to help you with that.
Yes, for sure. I can definitely get you in contact with Meg Saransky as well. She's the state chairperson, and she has such a passion for this program, and she's definitely a go-getter. She doesn't take no as an answer. So she's very good at fundraising money and getting to build those relationships. So I'll definitely keep that in mind.
It's just an incredible program, and I know from my daughters that when you go into that state week, you come out a totally different young woman. And I love the fact that you are also, and there's no crowns involved, as you can see, she wears a medal, but that you still go on to have your senior year to make the most of your title, and it also looks really good on resumes and on school applications and all that stuff. So again, congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time today. I appreciate you listening to me. And again, if you have any more questions or if you'd like to help building a chapter in any way, feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we're going to have a presentation from the Bethany Recovery Center for the group living use located at 1331 West Capitol Drive.
I'll just make a quick introduction. Representative is here from Bethany Recovery Center. They're located on Capitol Drive. Per their conditional use permit that they were approved, they were to come and speak with the council members, tell them how things are going. They came last August, but they were not operational for a full year at that point. They told us they were only operational for several months. So at that meeting in August of 22, you guys asked that they come back in 1 year. So here they are tonight to give a more formal update. Some of the questions they asked was where are the residents that you're serving, your clients, coming from? Are they local? Are they from the state? Are they from out of state? And then what kind of impact does this cause on city departments? So with that, I'll turn it over to Bethany to give an update this year. Thank you.
Thank you for coming back.
My name is Deborah Adamus, and I am the Program and Clinical Director of Bethany Recovery Center. Bethany Recovery Center is part of Bethany Christian Services, who, you know, we're a global organization, but this is the first program of its kind for Bethany. We have been up and running now. We are not at full capacity. We do have in fact, I have a handout here if I can. That answers some of the questions in terms of our census and where our referrals are coming from. We have two different floors. We have an 18-bed floor and a 12-bed floor. One of the floors, our second floor, we're contracted with the Department of Corrections. And so these are women that are coming out of the criminal justice system. All of their crimes or any of their crimes are all related to drug use. It could be multiple DUIs, it could be possession, it could be selling, but they're all related to their addiction. They come in to our program. We have I think I said a contract. They come into our program pretty broken. And they stay with us anywhere from 3 months to maybe 5 months. And then we refer back to their communities. Now you'll see noted on the handout that we have people from all over the state that comes to the DOC program, Department of Corrections program. And We have on our third floor, our 12-bed floor, we've reduced it now to an 8-bed floor for right now. That's for the general population, anybody from anywhere, really. And the numbers there are broken down, how many from Waukesha County. I think it's listed there at 14 year-to-date. So from the beginning of the year until this month, we've served 81 women. Our third floor, again, our general population floor, we take referrals from self-referrals, or hospitals may refer to us, outpatient counseling may refer to us, families may refer to us, and that average length of stay for the women on our third floor is about 45 days. They come to us, as I said, pretty broken. We serve the most vulnerable in our communities. Most of our residents right now are on Medicaid. Medicaid does not pay very well. Medicaid pays about $222 a day, and our daily rate is please don't quote me on this, I think it's $376 a day. We were doing 2 levels of treatment. We were doing a medically monitored treatment. That's a high-intensity program where they're, from morning until they go to bed, they're pretty much involved in different kinds of activities, group therapy being a big one. So it's a high-intensity, very structured program. We did have what was called transitional residential treatment as well, and that's where they finish the medically monitored program, the high-intensity program, and it's a drop-down where they then go out into the community, they get a job, they're saving money so they can become self-supporting. We decided for the time being that we were going to discontinue that level of care for a number of reasons. And I'll go back to, sadly, it's always about money, but Medicaid pays $99 a day for that level of care. And we just can't meet a budget with that mix, the TRT, transitional residential, and the medically monitored treatment program. So, but aside from that, we've really been doing some thinking about, we've got a lot of barriers for transitional residential treatment. One, there's no public transportation in Oconomowoc. The women that we have had on that level of care, we're getting jobs at Shorehaven and have done well, but anywhere else in the community, they don't have vehicles. So transportation is a real issue. Rent in the area, rent everywhere is ridiculous. So we're rethinking the whole transitional residential part of our program at this point. Any questions so far?
Do you feel that you've had any negative impact or influence on the city of Oconomowoc?
I don't think so. I mean, we have had, I feel like it's a lot, but maybe not. Calling to the fire department, calling to the police department. I don't have my notes in front of me, but you've got them. So I think we've had 20.
I got an extra one right here. Yeah.
Oh, is it on there? So we've had police calls, 12 calls to the police department, and fire department, we've had 21 emergency calls, 9 fire calls. Remember that when the women come into our program, many of them are very compromised medically as well. But we are a medically monitored program. So we don't have a physician on staff. We have a medical director, a physician, but we don't have 24-hour around-the-clock medical care. And so when somebody comes to us and they are medically compromised, have a seizure during their stay with us, having other medical issues, blood pressure issues, diabetic issues, we will call for an ambulance and have them transported. We also specialize in high-risk pregnancies with the women that we serve. They come to us sometimes, in their first trimester, sometimes in their second, sometimes in their third. These are high-risk pregnancies. So when they're about to deliver, and they've had issues like with blood pressure and so on, we've called an ambulance to have them transported to be, rather safe than sorry. The fire department calls, some of those calls have been a result of a malfunction with our alarm company, and some of it has been popping popcorn and it's setting off the fire alarms. We've since stopped popping popcorn in the center because that happened a couple of different times. Smoke in the kitchen, those sorts of things. That kind of covers our calls. If we have somebody who is psychiatrically not stable, and they have suicidal ideation, and they need a 24-hour medical watch, we refer to Waukesha Memorial or Rogers here in town. So those have been a number of calls as well. The police calls are, by and large, a result of our second floor residence where there's issues going on. We did have an issue with 2 women, and we have a no violence rule. It's a no tolerance for any violence whatsoever. Even threats of violence can be a means for being discharged. And when DOC women have issues that they're violating, let me back up a second. So between 2 women, a fight broke out. Now, I've been in this field for something like 43 years, and this is the first time, and I've been, by and large, involved in residential programs, both male and female. This is the first time that there was ever any physical acting out with one resident against the other. She pushed her. It wasn't like she beat her up or anything, not saying that any physical aggression is okay, but again, we have a no tolerance, absolutely no tolerance for any kind of violence. So we did contact the police, we did contact her probation officer, and she was taken into custody. So most of those, any of those discharges are because of rule violations within the center. We have pretty high standards, and we expect everybody to fall in line. And, we work closely with all our residents, and we care a great deal about them, but we've got to have those limits, those rules, those expectations to follow. So any questions?
Alderman Spiegelberg?
I remember when we approved this concept, and that was one of the questions was, would this be a negative impact on the community, or would there be excessive calls on police and fire? I have not heard one negative thing from your organization, and when you break down these calls, the police calls, it's like 1 a month. Fire department, and you said some of those were just kind of bogus calls. I mean, that's only still about 2. So I don't see that as exorbitant.
Thank you.
Alderman Rozak?
Well, I, for one, think the exact opposite. I think the calls are exorbitant. My understanding of these numbers here are the year-to-date, which is just January to August. The reason we asked you to come and report to us was when we issued the conditional use permit was to determine whether or not we felt this was a drain on the community. We have 21 emergency calls, 9 fire calls. I don't believe that those are all for popcorn. We also have 12 police calls, and that's just in the first 8 months. So I also question if you're transporting and calling EMS to transport high-risk pregnancies while you're taking high-risk pregnancies still at the facility. I mean, you're bringing them in, you know they're going to have a baby, and yet you don't have the ability to transport them. You also say you're medically monitoring some of these folks, but yet we have all these EMS calls. I would like to see the numbers at the end of the year, what they actually amount to. So I don't, it'd be nice to see what the full 12-month picture is before we take any action. But to me, this is very concerning for one small facility in their city. So it's a lot of police activity. And I'd like to hear what the chief has to say,
Yeah.
not tonight, but I think at some point it'd be nice to know what all these calls are pertaining to, why so many emergency calls. We have no information, just numbers, and I actually think the numbers are very, very large and concerning to me.
Well, I think because of the size of our facility, you know, when I looked at those two, it's like, ugh, I kind of cringed.
How many people live there on average per month?
On average, I would say maybe 23, 24. And if you compare us with other organizations our size, I don't know that we're really way out of line. We do take women who have high-risk pregnancies because we treat them. And we are doing double duty with, you know, with the resident who comes in and her unborn child. And we have staff that is stellar in dealing with our pregnant moms. We have a woman who is a child and family specialist, and she is phenomenal.
Well, look, I appreciate you answering the questions. When you came in last year, and I think the year before, the numbers didn't seem as bad to me in my head, and I don't remember what those were. But I'm looking at the numbers this year. What I'd like to see is something at the end of the year, January 1st, what the numbers were for all of 2023, so that we can take an actual holistic evaluation of this, and then ask the chief, ask the fire chief to come and talk to us about these calls and what we're dealing with there. For 20 to 24 people, you're talking about 6 to 8 houses worth of people in this little area that have, you know, maybe by the end of the year, 30, 40 different types of EMS and police calls. I think that's a lot. And I think this is what we were tasked to do. So I appreciate you coming in and reporting honestly what the numbers are. But as aldermen, this is what we were tasked to do, is look at this holistically, I think. And I think we need to see the full year and have you come back in January. That's what I would like to see done.
Other questions or comments from Alderman? Alderman Shellpepper.
Yeah, a lot going on, but, you know, I kind of agree with both pieces here a little bit. First of all, I'd say I haven't gotten any concerns or anybody has reached out in the district. Andy and I represent District 2. I haven't had anybody contact me, so I see that as a positive. The number of calls is definitely concerning, considering it's only, 8 months through the year. I would say, sometimes there's the services you are providing are essential. I think they're very important. I think the state has kind of, and the country as a whole has seen, the importance of addressing the issue. So to some extent, I understand, there could be some cost the community bears to have you as a part of the community, but I think you add to the community and you bring that value by providing, the services you do. But we got to make sure, we're being smart about this. And that's the other question I guess I had for Stan is this is a conditional use permit granted within kind of legal structures that we have in place. And as long as, they're conforming with that permit, they're entitled to continue operating. And I don't know if, the calls, the police calls, how that has an impact on that permit.
Well, if you were to want to terminate the permit, you would have to have a due process hearing, and you look into the terms of the ordinance itself and the conditional use permit that was issued, and make a determination whether there are substantial violations of the terms of either the ordinance or the permit.
Okay. Well, so I think it is, though, important to get a fuller accounting of what's happening over there, and I'd appreciate that, and I'd appreciate hearing more from Chief Pfister as well. It doesn't have to be tonight. But like I said, I appreciate what you guys are doing over there. I'm glad, and I haven't had any concerns, so, there's some things I'd like to look into further, but overall, I think you've been an addition to the community,
Thank you.
so.
Thank you.
Alderman Altman-Cloth.
So I have two things for you. First of all, I did take a chance to talk to Chief either yesterday or today, I can't remember. And then a little bit from what you said, that you have some really strong no-tolerance policies when it comes to drugs and violence. So you guys, from my understanding, don't hesitate to call the police when you need to kind of get that message across to your residents. So I appreciate that you do that because, I mean, I guess theoretically you could call a little less, and then to us it looks like you're not taxing those services. But I value more that you have a no-tolerance policy, so thank you for that. And then secondly, I was the alderman that you ran into on the boardwalk like a week ago, 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
And I have to admit, I put your little piece of paper in the card, but can you tell us a little bit about what you have a fundraiser coming up, correct?
We have a ride for recovery. So if anybody here rides a motorcycle and you want to be a part of this, I can leave this behind. But it's on September 16th, and we'll be starting out the ride at Harley in Oconomowoc. And then we won't be coming through town. We've got a path elsewhere. The police will be involved in sort of guiding us on our tour. We're very excited about it. We're getting a lot of good responses, a lot of people that are very, very interested. So if you can come and support us, that would be wonderful.
Great. Well, I think what I'm hearing from council is we'd like to kind of look at this again after the first of the year, looking at 2023 numbers, and I fully support that. I also really support what you're trying to do and applaud that. I am also one that hasn't heard anything about Bethany. That's usually a good thing.
Yeah.
So I applaud you from that standpoint, but I think for us to do our due diligence, we'd like to have you come back right after the first of the year, talk about it, and kind of see where we are. Any further questions? Thank you so much for coming in for the update.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to just add that I didn't mean to imply that all our calls to the fire department was because of burnt popcorn. Just saying.
Maybe they need better popcorn. We're still in the comments and suggestions from citizens. I do have one blue card. Lynn Wright, would you like to come up and share your thoughts and ideas with the council? Please state your name and your address, and the floor is yours.
Lynn Wright, 707 Marigold Street. First, I would like to thank you, Mayor, for the call last week to update me on the tunnel project that is very passionate to me, and the projected completion date is in October, so I'm very excited about that. Second topic is the recent appraised values that we all received that have dramatically increased again. So I know from a prior comment from the attorney that increased appraised values does not need to mean that our taxes have to go up, so that you guys can play with the mill rate. With the extremely overinflated, and I don't think anybody will disagree, that the property values are nonsensical for most of the properties. Even though people are willing to pay it, it's just whatever. Just doesn't make sense to me. That you can not increase, since our taxes went up so much with the Western Lakes Fire Department and with the school referendum, plus the increased taxes because of those over the past 3 years. My property value went up 60% in 3 years, 60%, from $237,000 to $380,000 for a almost 59-year-old house on a quarter-acre lot in the city. Okay, that's 1,400 square feet. I tried to fight it. I had a HELOC done in April, and she came back, and it was $359,000, so I at least said lower at $21,000. She came back and said that the comps that the bank used weren't good, and she was sticking to it. I just wanted to cry. Didn't know what to do. So my mortgage payment went up $170 a month. Seniors are being priced out of their homes. So please, when you're addressing the budget, you now got shared value that you guys have been passionate about getting from the state in the new budget, that you really fine-tune the budget so you don't have to be a strain on taxpayers this year. And then just briefly, I understand the Rockwell Partners, that I guess the community, I've heard the term sinkhole, so I'll use that huge sinkhole where they can't do the parking underground. And I understand that they haven't come back yet with new plans, but the plans will be no underground, that it will be ground and first floor. And so why can't that sinkhole be filled, that you guys can't request that it be filled? It's just an eyesore. It's got to be done, so why can't it be done now? I know the community, I see it all over social media, agree with that. And then I was in the personnel meeting, and those 3 new positions that you guys are going to be discussing shortly, I appreciate that Alderman Shellpepper and Alderman Mulder voted to have the discussion here. I think that's very transparent and appreciated. And one of the reasons Shellpepper said is because we have asked for committee meetings to be taped and streamed, and it hasn't been done. So you want to be transparent to the community. So thank you for that. And that those positions consider all the costs, benefits, everything, and maybe part-time, again, because of increased cost of everything, gradually see if they are really needed if you do decide to move forward with them. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Without any further comments or blue cards, we'll move on. I'd like to entertain a motion for consent agenda items 7A and 7B.
Rozak, so moved.
Second, Ellis.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? On to our committee reports. We're going to start off with Personnel Committee. Personnel Committee report. The first of 4 items, there's consider act on establishing a full-time communications and marketing position in 2020 to 24.
Good evening.
Mr. Duffy.
Good evening. As we talked about in our budget processes several months ago, one of the things we've continued to talk about in our strategic plan is looking at the demand for communication needs of the city as an organization. We have brought on an intern over the past 4 years, which I feel has been very successful for us to do, sharing communications and marketing components, not just from a tourism perspective, but all other departments within the organization. I think we're at a time as we continue to talk and get our community excited about things happening, whether it's ordinance elements, getting press releases out, getting information out about activities and events in this community, having a dedicated person to do that. We are at that point as a community and as a destination community. Currently, we are using a group of people to do some of those things with the continued turnover of the position. Again, we're training, retraining, rehiring. And this could be a tremendous opportunity for us to continue to move forward and set that basis into the future for those elements. As the memo indicates, that would indicate or increase the cost to the city of $53,500. However, that is intended specifically to come from tourism and the utility, wastewater, water, and electric utilities. So not impact the overall levy. We've actually also shifted this. If you recall, when we created the intern position, a percentage came from the city levy, a percentage came from tourism, as well as a percentage came from the utilities. By making that shift, we've actually moved away about $10,800 from the levy purely over to the tourism accommodations tax, trying to do everything we can to make this position worthwhile for all departments. As we know, we have a couple very busy things that are going on in the future of this community with the Wizard of Oz, with the 150th. We oftentimes assist the utilities with the lead lateral program, the police department with the National Night Out, with some other things that we've got going on. So again, I don't want people to think that this is purely a tourism position. This has really been an organizational communications position, of which tourism is finding a way to fund it off of the levy. So look for your support. Look for you to continue to support the strategic plan we've identified to meet that demand for transparent communication and continued effective communication to our citizens.
Alderman Altman-Cloth.
So I have a couple questions and then one big concern. So you said right now they would be funded through through tourism. So what if the state changed the rules on that down the road, that we can't use those dollars for personnel?
I mean, the statute's very broad. We do a report every year on what we use those funds for. I don't believe that they've ever monitored our report. I'd have to look over to see. We submitted to report to the Department of Revenue of what we spend from that. Do I envision them changing it? I don't think so. That not only would affect this organization, but many organizations throughout the state that are using their accommodations tax, not just for personnel, but for other things. We currently, under the statute, are capped as an organization to actually retain a certain amount of money. Actually, the city general fund gets about $260,000, I believe it is, right off the top of tourism tax. So this is the money completely separate from that, purely allocated for tourism promotion and community development.
So if we were to have a full-time designated person for this position, would that eliminate any need in the future for, hiring 3 Barn or any other companies like that?
Well, currently, we don't hire 3 Barn.
We're not hire contract with.
We use them as a resource. And really, their resource to us is training, and their resource is equipment. We have not had to hire out for any video work we've done as an organization, so that's been a tremendous cost savings for this community. Would we not, I don't think we would need to hire 3 Barn. Should we want to continue that level of communication, especially video communication, we may need some equipment, which would be a cost for us to be able to do. But again, if we purely use those components from a tourism promotion and development standpoint or community development standpoint, we could use tourism funds for that as well.
So my last thing, and you don't have to answer this because I don't think that this is really an answerable question or concern, but from the digging that I've done over the course of like the last couple months and more recently, is that we as a city really have no policies on the type of content that we put out, whether it's in your email bio, what gets put on our Facebook page, or any other social media platform, or even our website. So until we have some sort of policy around content that goes out, I don't think I can support this position.
Alderman Shellpepper.
Yeah, Mayor, so the reason I wanted to bring this forward to the main meeting for the hire, as I discussed with the video piece, wanting to make sure we recorded this, everybody can, know what we're talking about. It can be very transparent. 60%, I believe, of the city's operating budget, its general fund is personnel. We talked about that yesterday. 60%, I mean, that's a huge portion, right? I mean, that counts for most of our spending, as it should. The city is a service-based organization. The services the city provides are the people. And so, it naturally makes sense that we're gonna have, 60% of the budget is gonna be on people. But that also means, every time we add somebody new, I think there needs to be, significant scrutiny. It's gotta be like clear, quantified deliverables. I said this when I campaign, I said this, when I knock on doors. The hiring is gonna be the thing I will zone in on every single time to make sure that it makes sense because it's the easiest way to be fiscally responsible as a city. Because when we're gonna hire somebody, I know that right now we're spending 32,000, it's an extra 53,000, but really at the end of the day, it's almost $86,000. So we're not really talking $53,000 a year, we're closer talking to $90,000. And so that's why I wanted to bring it forward into this discussion. And then that kind of pairs up with the history of how we got to where we're at now, because this position, really started as a privately funded position from Bank 5-9 for like 15 grand or whatever it was. There was no city obligation involved. And when, I think this was like 3 years ago, maybe it was 4 years ago at this time, by now.
Yeah, there were 3 sponsors.
Well, so it was more than Bank 5-9.
Yeah.
So there was 3 sponsors, wasn't coming out of the city.
In the pandemic. Yeah.
And I think, and I don't know, I could go back to the video now, but I'm pretty sure I started raising concerns about, is this gonna turn into a 100% full-time position funded by the city? And I don't remember anybody saying, yeah, that's the plan, but I could be wrong. And I know I've been one of the ones who have advocated for better use of the tourism dollars. And I've specifically talked about your salary, and those are things that we're looking at, and other, major projects that we can spend the accommodation tax on to make a sizable impact. So I'm for that. I want to find good ways to leverage that money that's being used as a room tax for our community, to bring more people to our community. What do you think the main deliverable is going to be that this communications intern, is going to provide to, Miss Wright in the back, who lives in the city, or somebody else? How are they going to be impacted, and in their quality of life is going to change based on this communications intern?
Sure.
Or full-time position?
Again, I think more and more people are reliant upon social media. I mean, that's been a primary thing. I know there are people who are anxiously waiting for what's happening Wednesday. It's Festival Week. We do a lot of activities, a lot of events and those types of things as we continue to move towards, like I said, the next 2 years are going to be pretty busy. That's going to tax several individuals in this organization. I think this position can help deal with some of those event organizational pieces as well, alleviate some of the pressure on some of the other departments. Currently rely on an individual in planning, an individual in parks to be able to do that. I think we can move some of those things in this permanent position to be able to affect that. I think we've been doing a much better job using the website and the social media to be able to educate people about ordinance issues, whether that's dogs or whether that's crosswalks, whether that's all of those components and elements, and assisting other departments. The lead lateral program, all of those types of things.
Yeah.
This communications position was the entity that was really putting those. We have very, very good people in this organization that do their jobs very well, but sometimes we need to communicate things differently to them so that they understand that there are things out there able to help them. I mean, how do you make a lead pipe sound interesting?
Yeah, I guess, and those are all, some of them are kind of vague. It was kind of hard for me to zone in on the exact deliverables. Like the social media piece you raised multiple times, that's also regularly been the focus of the deliverables when we've had the intern come in and present to us. And I see the value there, but that still is leaving out a significant portion of Oconomowoc. When I run for election, I go knock on doors. The social media piece is like this. The human interaction piece is what makes a difference, and that's how people interact and hear about things. And I get, the value of pushing the information out, but it's just, I don't see why we can't stick with the intern or stick with, like maybe even a part-time thing. But I still think the intern is where it's at, and that's where I'm at. I'm just not sold on the full-time position.
Alderman Ellis?
This full-time person, will they be working in all the departments?
They have, and they'll continue to, yes.
How many departments do we have in the city?
I guess it's going to be 12.
And does,
Currently 11.
11? That's close.
does each department have its own person doing it now at this point? As far as marketing or anything along those lines?
Well, right now, the position, although it's communications and marketing, currently it's housed in economic development, but is available to assist all other departments throughout the organization. And has been.
My question once again was, does every department have its own person at this point?
Doing communications?
That is
No.
correct.
We only have several people who have access to our social media accounts. 3 departments, I think, do, based on very specific components. 3 primary people who manage our website, 2 primary people that manage our tourism website, and then we have, through the other communications pieces, our website component. As you recall, our last intern designed our whole website, so that cost us literally $3,000 in their time. And then each department has somebody who manages their specific content for the website, but that's it.
So we have several individuals at this time that are doing the job of what this one individual would
No.
do? So this is an addition to, not a replacement of.
Well, currently, we have an intern position. This would be replacing currently, the way our intern position is, it's a 1-year intern that we're replacing recently it's been June to May. And then we're replacing them every June, retraining them every June. So then June, July, August, usually right in around now, we're getting where they're trained back into the organization to build work. Then they're either deciding, again, the other piece is, and with our last intern, we asked them to stay till May. I think Gracie left in April. End of March, beginning of April. So,
Alderman Spiegelberg?
Okay, so I have a few scattered thoughts, kind of. Do most communities our size have a full-time intern, or a full-time communications person from this standpoint? Do you have any idea?
Right now, we're 19,000 people. I know that there's organizations that do. There's some of them that have a joint utility and organizational communications piece. I know Sun Prairie does, I know Kiwani does, or Kokona, I'm sorry. Again, I'm trying to think of those. Middleton. So
Okay,
again,
and tagging off of that, we call ourselves an event-driven community. So really, a person in that full-time position would have even more work in a community like ours because of the fact that we have so many events. I don't think this position, I'm in support of this. I don't think this position needs to everyday benefit every citizen, but if it benefits citizens and individuals who come to our events, then we are, through that position and through that communication, bringing much more revenue to this city. I know someone's talked about quantifying the position, and reading through the background here, I think it's very likely that there is a payback on this position, that we could quantify that. It's not here, but I'm saying just from the standpoint of not contracting out some of the things that we currently do, hours and hours that would be put back into the pockets of Jason and Paige, who are doing so many of those things now. The retraining each year of the intern and the learning curve that comes with that position every year that also costs the city money.
Alderman Mulder?
I'm trying to, starting fresh, right? Do we need this position? I think we do, for some of the reasons that you were commenting on. I think that we have put a lot of investment in this community into growing ourselves as a destination. I think that to do that, to put those investments out there and then not want to tell the world about them, to get the benefit of putting those out there, doesn't seem wise to me. And Alderman Altman-Cloth, I think, I appreciate your point. I think that's excellent. I think I would put the cart on the other side of the horse. If we fill this position, we'll have a professional person in place that can help us establish and follow those guidelines. I would expect we probably don't have them, because every 12 months we're turning someone over, we're bringing someone on right out of college or in college that doesn't have the opportunity to lead in that role, but you bring someone on with continuity that can go across years to do the promotion of these events that are 2 and 3 years out, or that we grow year after year after year. And that's when they take on that autonomy, and that's when we get better services versus just a project based of do this video or attack this problem we have in tourism. Instead, we build out the entire. So the expense is high. I don't doubt that. Honestly, 55,000 isn't a tremendous salary. That's starting salary out of college for a marketing person right now. But I think it's better to have that continuity. So I'm in favor of it. I think we'll have that person help us kind of professionalize that position. Alderman Rozak, and then Michelle Pepper after.
Yeah, there were a lot of good points brought up. One thing is we don't know what, other than some anecdotal comments here today, what other towns our size are doing really. I think we should know that before we do this. I think we pat ourselves on the back a lot in Economowoc. I love Economowoc, I love living here, but there's a lot of communities that believe that they're event-driven, they've got all these events. I don't think that alone is enough. I think what we've asked for quite a few years with regard to the intern in this position is more solid deliverables. What is this person going to actually bring to the community? Do we get 100 more people to Festival of the Arts because of the marketing? Do we hit more people on Facebook because they, did one more post a week? I mean, there is ways to quantify this that I think we should ask them to do. Jennifer Altman-Cloth made a good point about a change in the law. When the tourism fund, when we started taxing and we increased the tax, there was a change in the law about 6 to 7 years ago, reducing how much we could put in the general fund. We should never plan that a change in the law wouldn't occur that says you can't use this money for communication people that are split amongst departments like we're doing now. In 2020, during COVID, the tourism fund was $47,000 short. Now, they made up the money because they had a bunch of reserves from the year before. But we actually budgeted in 2021, if you recall, additional funds to potentially make up if the room tax didn't catch up. That's without an $85,000 marketing intern in the budget. So when we hire someone, I think we do have to be very careful about it, even if it's coming from tourism money, because that one way or another could be money we have to pay. And the folks in the community should know we're paying for it anyway, because 25% is coming out of wastewater, utilities, electric. So you're paying for it in your rate, one way or the other. I'm not against us keeping the intern or doing a permanent part-time position for someone that wants to come and do Facebook posts and do some communication and work with your office. But I think this is a big ask, because what will happen if we do have another pandemic? What if there's a change in the law? What we're going to see is the general levy picking this up, because never ever, except one time I think with Lori, did we say we don't need this person anymore in city government. Once you add an employee, you will always need that employee, and you will always have to pay, and it will always be a critical person that can't be let go. So I'm against this right now for all of those reasons. I don't think we should add this full-time position right now. I think there is better use of the tourism funds than this.
Alderman Shell Pepper.
Yeah, Matt raised a good point, and I was going to bring back to the question I had. What does our operating revenue look like for the room tax on an annual basis? Do you know that off the top of your head?
Well, it's completely increasing. I mean, we're budgeting $470,000, $460,000 for next year.
Okay, but then 2 years ago, we didn't make budget. I mean, so.
Well, we did. What we did is we budgeted money for the general fund, thinking we weren't getting the room tax, and then the room tax well exceeded that. So that $80,000, I think that's what was the number, I'm going by memory, that went automatically right back into your reserve fund, because we didn't need it.
Okay.
So yes, during the pandemic, there were several things we did. We definitely cut costs. We definitely didn't do a lot of things other than internal. That actually helped build the capacity, because most of the promotional pieces that we're doing ourselves internally, or other communities are hiring people to do them. So again, room tax has been very healthy the last couple years, and that'll continue.
What have we been putting into the reserves then every year, would you say, from room tax?
I gotta look at Lori, 170,000?
Okay, so I mean, though, if we're increasing this now by, $55,000, I mean, that's taking out a pretty significant chunk of your annual operating revenue and leaves us less opportunities to, enact some of these meaningful capital projects that we want to do, right? I mean, that limits us in that sense.
If the intent is to use them for capital projects, which may or may, again, are those tourism projects or those other projects?
Well, it seems like a lot of the tourism projects that we, had reviewed just like a couple weeks ago were larger, capital projects, so.
Alderman Ellis and then Alderman Spiegelberg.
Okay, my question is, what would be the pros and cons of a permanent part-time individual as compared to a permanent full-time person?
Well, again, I think the biggest thing is consistency. And again, I think we've been much more consistent now in out there communicating information to people. I think having a full-time person, the other departments have had greater access to an individual to be able to do more assistance for them as they continue to move forward. And again, what we're also trying to do is figure out what the community wants. What information do they want for us to be able to continue to provide? Because that's an element that is changing, I would say, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, on a seasonal basis. And we're just trying to get even the departments to think, hey, in a certain period of time, what do we want to get out to the community to communicate them about, right? Because again, that is still continue to be a challenge of whether it's hydrant flushing, whether it's when do you collect your Christmas tree? When do you, all those types of things are things we've never communicated or used, but now we have a consistent person who we say that. What are some things you want to get out at a certain time of year? Let's put them on a calendar. Let's figure out when those things are happening. How do we help our fire district and shovel out fire hydrants every season? Those are things that everyday residents don't remember to do, but we got to continue to communicate and educate our community to do that.
And what are the cons? You've given me the pros, now what are the cons?
Again, it's always going to be a dollar discussion. Again, I see this as an opportunity for us and you to continue to have effective communications with constituents. Again, I'm going to be an advocate for the position because, again, I think it's helped us as an organization.
Yeah.
And so from a con standpoint, it's always going to be dollars and cents. It's always going to be delivering of a service, whether that's communication or plowing somebody's street, right?
Well, and what I'm
There are
hearing.
people who are looking at our information. I believe there's other organizations looking at what we put out there, which is good for us as an organization.
I think the council basically has to look at the cost and the benefit. And so the benefits, some people aren't seen or haven't experienced, or we as a city are not showing it in a way that you want it. That's what I'm hearing. From a financial standpoint, I see a huge benefit, but I'm behind the scenes watching what's going on, engaged. I'm seeing aldermen contact the intern, making logos, making flyers, utilities doing the same. I see them interviewing, videoing at the police station in different places. But it's all looking at a different audience. It's not just social media, but I can tell you when I came on as mayor, we were having 1 or 2 posts a week at the most, usually 1 or 2 posts a month, run by 2 people with full-time jobs, plus they were trying to do some social media. And then I came to my first tourism commission meeting, and I'm looking at this, I said, where is this strategy? No offense, Bob, but they didn't have the resources. That's where the concept came from, because there wasn't a soldier in there putting that stuff together. There wasn't we have creative people, but that's not their training. That's how it came together. Now it is a full-time position, and there's more than enough work. Currently, Amanda is overloaded with all the things in her queue right now, and we're trying to manage that. So the full-time position is, do you want to keep it as an internship, not have it at all, or do you want to make it an annual program, a full-time employee that will add the consistency that Bob has talked about. But when I look at some of these things that are happening without a person in that position to, part-time person, we don't have, there's too much work. And so you always try to put people in positions to be successful. I don't want to see our planning department, our park and rec department, and part of your work, Bob, falter because you're trying to do all of those things. That's what I saw in 2020. Now, it's a policy decision for you, the pros and the benefits. And there's a lot of this stuff that you can't measure, and that's frustrating. Marketing's that way. We can measure Facebook. How Facebook and Instagram, it's rocking. Now, we can bring that back, or Mark, we could send it off on a Friday thing to give you that information. It was not very busy at all, and you're getting a lot of activity. And what do you do when you want to look at a place to go? You pop up your phone and you look to see what's going on. So your decision is cost and benefit, just like I started the discussion. Is there enough benefit that you're going to say, hey, we're going to take that risk of moving this forward? But it's a developing position. So coming back to Altman Close comment, she's exactly right. We have to put in the structure and the policies. But we're here now to figure out if this is something that you want a budget to go forward. And that's the reason that Bob has brought it forward. Other comments? Alderman Spiegelberg.
So if we don't pass this tonight, or if we continued with an intern or even a part-time permanent position, there's still a cost involved to the city, because there are costs involved with Paige and Jason and others who have to jump off from what they're supposed to be doing and doing some of these things that they're doing now. There will be a cost. There's still a cost involved.
Alderman
I
Maroney.
agree with that sentiment as far as a structure. I think there has to be a structure in place, how it consolidates, how it conforms to the other departments in its usefulness. I thought the intern was great. As far as the presentation that she gave that I heard a couple months ago, so I see the benefits of it, but yeah, I think there has to be a structure to it.
And that's the next evolution. Tony, can you come up to the microphone, please? Thank you.
I want to address the part-time comment. If you go the part-time route, we have restrictions through the Wisconsin retirement system. So if they go over 1,200 hours in a year, we have to pay benefits on them. So I almost feel like the part-time option is out. And that's the reason why the intern has to leave at the end of a year too, because she's worked over the 1,200 hours. She can do that up to a year, but have to leave. Otherwise, he or she becomes benefited. So it's either intern in my mind or go run with the full-time. Part-time would be very difficult. Even if you tried to put in 2 part-timers, you'd have some issues there, so.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you.
Other comments from council? Would anybody like to make a motion?
Sure, let's take a vote. I'll move that we approve the position.
Second.
Any further comments or questions? Call roll, please.
Alderman Rozak.
Nay.
Alderman Altman Cloth.
Nay.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
Alderman Shellpepper. Alderman Maroney.
Aye.
Passes.
Passes. I would like to make a comment as this moves forward. Bob, I want to make sure that we address the issues of trying to figure out the return on our investment, okay? That's been brought up several times. We thought in our presentations we were giving you enough. We're obviously not. So I think it's really, really important as this moves forward, we give them all the Facebook and all the different metrics that we know we can measure. We can talk about what they're doing and what the retail price may be for some of that. An example of that is the last intern built the webpage. That's an expense that we didn't have to outsource. But I think those points are very, very valid. And if there's someone that has a strong passion about some of these things, please let Bob know, and we'd be happy to have you as be part of that process.
And it would be nice too to see some policy or something created to make sure of what the content is that goes out. So to kind of get that ball rolling as well.
No, I think
I agree.
that's smart.
Absolutely.
Good. Okay. Let's move on. Consider act on adding a Department of Public Works crew position in 2024.
All right, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, before you, almost on the other end of the spectrum of personnel, now we're discussing operational DPW guy, sorry. So yes, before you, I got a Public Works crew person. Currently, our staff, as you heard right from our audience tonight, Tom was a part of our staff. We have seven laborers, one foreman, and one supervisor. So we got 9 guys, and we've had 9 guys for, maybe back to the 1970s. As far back as anybody has seen, our department has not grown. It's actually shrunk from some of the retirees I've talked to. But different operations, much different structure prior to that. So what a lot of the common things in Public Works that you guys have related to, I don't know that any are all that unique, but a lot of our primary positions and responsibilities during our winter season and our snow clearing operations does not just consist of our department, it also consists of other departments, as we cannot complete a full plow or ice removal just solely with the 9 guys that we have on staff. We utilize the water, the electric, sewer guys if necessary, parks department, sometimes during the day. So there's definitely a need, a metric that can easily be displayed on our winter operations. The issue that develops over the years is that those demands from those departments are, their infrastructure is getting greater. Their demands for obtaining and maintaining them are also increasing as the city is growing. It's a good thing. The city grows, we absorb more assets, more things to manage. There are more streets, there's more miles. We're up to almost 95 miles inside the city right now that we have to maintain. Those are dramatically different from 10, 20 years ago with the same staff. How do you manage that, Like I said, we utilize other departments over the years. That used to be maybe the 9, 11 at most. Now we're reaching up to 17 guys to finish a full plow right now. Those are real numbers that helps supplement some of the work as we go through our winter and our snow clearing operations. It's a full 6-month operation, obviously. Another thing that's also helped us get through to the point where we're at is you guys have been investing money into equipment. We have trucks, bigger trucks now. We hold more salt. We don't have to return back, refill, go back out. There's less transportation. So the advancement and the investment that's been done is noticeable. You can manage some of these routes, and that also helps get us to where we're at. We are currently looking at subdivisions right now where we're adding 2 to 5 miles of pavement that we will be responsible for maintaining. Not only this year, we've got 600 homes coming in the next few years in Olympia. We've got subdivision growing to the northeast. We've got other demands. We've always been, as you guys have already stated, an event service per city, a community that is very active. That requires a lot of services outside of our snow clearing, and us preparing for parades, us preparing for events is very demanding. It takes a lot of guys. We've got 2 guys, and some days 3 guys out on the lake, as we have talked extensively already tonight about the responsibilities. That demand continues to grow too. So once you devote some of that, a third of your personnel to a lake, that's just less that we're maintaining our streets with. You're clearing the streets half the year and you're preparing to fix them during the other half. We have a guy on street sweeping. That's, primary position, responsibility. So those are all things, and we constantly not only maintain LaBelle, but the piers, the buoys, all that on LaBelle is also inside of the city, the beaches. Some of those things, activities may have also, sometimes get forgotten. We do a lot of grass mowing. Even though the Parks Department maintains the majority of their parks, we have a lot of field grass that is maintained. Honestly, we could put one guy on streets, signs, all day long. We've got a huge role into maintaining our street signs, keeping them up to date, knockdowns, street signs, street name signs. Those are a constant demand that, I have to attend to almost every day for that. We've got a whole variety of responsibilities that's common to our public works. I'm just trying to make that evident that, to maintain those services, to maintain the level of service that the city, has been used to, it's getting to the point where I really feel like the department would benefit, and the city and residents will also benefit from an individual being added to our staff.
Thank you. Comments and questions from council. Alderman Rozak.
No offense to Bob, but I think this one's an easier sell for me in my head. Roads, fire, police are critical infrastructure. It's a lot easier to put a number and, some of the things you've told us on the extra person. The fact that we haven't added a person for 30 years and the amount of roads we've added is pretty amazing. Credit to Mark probably for running that department very frugally over the years. That doesn't mean you're not running it frugally, but we are growing, and we're a growing community. So I'm all in favor of this. I've been asking that we add someone for a couple of years, at least explore that idea, and I think this is the right time with the shared revenue. And I think it's a modest request, so you probably could have stopped at, can I have that extra guy?
And for the community, they also went through, the Personnel Committee also went through discussions on this prior to the meeting. So any other comments? Alderman Shellpepper.
I kind of have a question outside of this specific position, but it has to do with Public Works, because I'm looking at the org chart that you provided us with. We have a Public Works supervisor and then a Public Works foreman who reports to that Public Works supervisor. It seems like the foreman's the only person who reports to the supervisor. Why do we have a supervisor and a foreman? What's the logic there? What's the necessity?
Yeah, so the foreman he'll be more of your field guy controlling the operations, whether we're doing our catch basin repairs, storm sewer work. He has that role and responsibility that he'll be working directly with the crews for that. Brian Steinke is our supervisor that would be responsible for the entire fleet or group of guys. Is that what you're asking? I'm sorry.
Okay, so the Public Works supervisor and the Public Works foreman, it seems like a redundant, like the only person reporting to the supervisor is the foreman, according to the org chart. So how come the supervisor isn't supervising the 5 Public Works crew employees and the 2 maintenance specialists, DPW crew people? Can you explain that to a layperson like myself?
Well, I didn't put the chart together, but
Yeah.
they do.
They do.
They do.
So the
So, yeah.
supervisor does the foreman's job as well.
Are you asking who does what role or who reports to who?
I'm just trying to figure out why we got a Public Works supervisor and a Public Works foreman. I guess that's what's not completely clear to me. What is the supervisor doing that the foreman's not doing and vice versa? And that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, I guess the foreman would be, he has an operator's license.
Uh-huh.
And he would be working with the crews for the operational field work, and then they would all report to our supervisor.
You mind if I truncate that? Is he a working foreman, or is he just standing
foreman.
around looking at them?
He's our working foreman.
Okay, so it's slightly different than, in my head, that was the question I think you're getting.
Right.
He's actually working.
Sorry if I didn't answer that right, but yeah, that's.
The working foreman versus the guy just standing around in the office. Right. Okay.
And
Alderman Ellis?
I think it's a good question. I was thinking the exact same thing. I wrote it down. So.
how many foremen do we have?
One.
Other questions or comments for Mr. Herzog?
Yeah, I've got another question, Mayor.
Yeah, shoot.
Overtime costs, how do we see this being impacted in terms of the 7 current crew members that we have? I mean, do you see it changing at all? I mean, do we?
Yeah, majority of our overtime costs are all generated by what snow events we get. It's a tough one to handle, but like we discussed, in theory, I truly believe that we will see a difference in what labor hours you are seeing. Right now, we currently utilize other departments for help in our operations for plowing, and most likely they're classed higher or possibly classed higher. We would be looking at this position here. So the thought is that you can control possibly not only their overtime hours, but their regular hours and the rates that are associated to it. Now, if you're going to pay overtime because the event just is that demanding, I think that would be a kind of maybe a one-to-one though.
And then, since this is a position that is responsible for the buoy placement on Lac La Belle, this is something I've been contacted about just, this summer, in terms of it seems like these buoys continue to creep further and further out into the lake in terms of where the slow no-wake zone is. Our city administrator assures me that there's like set geographic points as to how
Yeah,
these are based.
so we have fixed landmarks.
Yeah,
I think we've got scope creep here.
Yeah, no, this isn't scope creep. This
The trees are
position puts
growing.
out the
Buoy
buoys. If they're gonna be putting out the buoys, I think we need to take a look at these buoy placement again and how we're determining that, because as we push them out further and further, we're impacting people who live on the lake, who use the lake, all sorts of things, so.
Sure.
Something I look forward to talking further about.
Sure.
And I support adding this position.
Well, and I've seen them be moved by people,
Yeah,
so that
we had to put
happens.
bigger weights on them because
Yeah.
the wave action can move them, so.
Used to use those little weights out of those old ropes in windows, the weights in the window. They'd use those mostly for the buoys, but they're much
Yeah,
easier
so
to
we've
move
got
those.
pretty heavy, good, solid ones now. We have picked up some of the towns and returned them.
Motion to add the public work crew position for 2024.
Second.
Any further discussion? Comment from Mr. Fry?
I just want to make everybody aware that when we talked about this position, that if it was going to be approved tonight, that we would be looking to come back to you and discuss with the budget the purchase of an additional plow truck in order to add another plow route for this person. So I just wanted to make you aware of that before you voted on it, so that when we come at budget time and we talk about adding it, it won't be the first time you're hearing it.
Out of debt? No, that's out of this year's.
So,
Capital?
we have
capital's approved.
we have a plan that we'll talk about.
I'm not comfortable with that.
Yeah. I think we need to know where that money's coming from before we vote on this.
Absolutely.
Well, here, that's interesting. Well, you shouldn't have said anything tonight about it, but, because.
I didn't want the vote to go through and then have it come up and someone said, well, why didn't you tell
Well,
us
that's
about it?
fair.
Come up first. Why are we sitting here now finding out that you want $330,000 6 weeks from now to buy a plow truck, and I'm hearing about it 30 seconds before I was about to approve a position that I feel the city needs?
Yeah. I still think we need the position, but we don't have to vote on this tonight. We can wait. We can wait till the budget cycle.
You don't have to approve the plow truck either.
Well, that's fair.
I'm just making you
Well,
aware
no,
that we would
the
come
problem-
in and be
The problem
asking
here
for
is that if we go ahead and we approve this individual, whomever he or she may be, down the road, they're going to need it. So now our hands are tied. I wish this would have been part of the general conversation in the beginning.
So
'cause
if-
now I'm feeling.
No, I can assure you that if
Let me finish.
Okay.
Let me finish. Now I'm feeling a little kind of, okay, what's the next shoe that's going to drop? And this has happened on way too many occasions. It really has.
No,
I don't believe that's the intent. The intent is to get you informed about what's going on.
And I appreciate that.
And if all of these things were all lined up at the proper time, that would have happened. And Mark just asked me he wanted to make a comment. So I think it's being transparent, and I think it's telling you what's going on. And there's no hanky-panky here, guys.
But I can assure you that if the council does not decide to move ahead with the plow truck, that this person will still be useful in the department.
But they're gonna be sitting in a seat somebody else was in plowing last year.
Anyway, right.
We have,
We're saying,
remember-
one of the things,
Yeah.
one of the arguments that was made was that this person is needed for plowing operations, and that would alleviate needing to pay someone else overtime because they won't be brought in to plow now. So how does that equal more? I mean, if that is, I guess I'm just confused in the
Clear.
overall system.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, and then also in committee, you had mentioned about how with an additional person, now we will have 9 plowing routes opposed to 8.
Yeah, correct. We might even, it changes a lot for how many routes you have depending on how many crew you have. But there's 8 primary routes. We could split that up as we often have to do anyways. And you can add that to a 9th. Now, would he be sitting there doing nothing if there was no truck? No. There's 17 plowers.
Can we use some tourism money for this plow truck? Can
I
we
mean,
put
we
like a
could
big
put
logo on the
visit
side?
over-
Logo.
Let's do it.
So we
I'm
have,
still
we
in
have a
favor of it.
motion and we have a second. Any further discussion? Any further clarification needed?
I'll support the position. We need the position. This is all very confusing. I'm not gonna do this. As the chair of the committee, to not know until now that we're talking about another plow truck, it feels like not transparency to me. I know I can vote on it against it later, but it still feels like this is something shouldn't be coming right now.
And I think as a chairman of Public Works, you should have been informed. I would agree.
Nobody likes surprises. This comes as a surprise. It's the first thing I tell anybody that works for me. I don't like surprises. Never surprise me. No, I'm surprised. So.
I'll tell them to cancel your birthday party.
Yes.
Sorry.
My heart can't take it.
Surprise birthday party.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further comments? Call roll, please.
Alderman Rozak?
Aye.
Alderman Altman-Cloth?
Aye.
Alderman Ellis?
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg?
Aye.
Alderman Mulder?
Aye.
Alderman Shellpepper?
Aye.
Alderman Maroney?
Aye.
Thank you for the great discussions. So let's move on to our next item. Thank you, Mr. Herzog. Consider act on adding a utility locating system maintenance and fleet assistant position for 2024. Mr. Kane.
Thank you, Mayor. The utility is seeking to add one position for utility locating, system maintenance, and fleet assistant position. Currently, we brought our locating in-house, and we do all of it with one position. Was the intent in 2020, so we locate all the electric, water main, sanitary sewers, storm sewers, and fiber optic within the city and the surrounding area itself. And over the last couple of years, we recognize that this is more than one position worth of work. So it's about a position and a third. So we have that one full-time position, so we're looking to fill that other gap. Currently, we fill it by utilizing other current utility staff to help fill those gaps. And then additionally, when that one locator is off, we pull staff from every single department in order to fill that role and to complete those locating tasks itself. So the other portion of that position would be filled doing typical system maintenance that our crews are doing right now, such as lawn mowing, just lawn mowing, restoration, other snow plowing activities around the facility itself. And then additionally, they'd help in the fleet department that needs assistance doing typical maintenance that we do on all of our vehicles that we have, such as changing oil, filter replacements, greasing, things of that nature. So they can focus more on their more skill set that they have. So then I'm looking for a motion to.
I have a quick question for you. You have it as a 2024 position. Is there a specific time in the beginning of 2024 that you want to have that position filled? And are you planning on posting the application towards the end of the year?
The intent would be to fill it as soon as we can in 2024, because still as winter months, we can still use the position to help with the snow plowing, the maintenance on the fleet aspects of things too.
So we won't have somebody just standing around in January?
No, we will not.
Okay, thanks. Just my question. Alderman Altman-Cloth?
How many snow plows do you need?
I don't need any snow plows. Good
Just making
question.
sure.
Alderman Shellpepper?
Yes, can you explain again why we started doing our own locating services in 2020?
So in 2020, we evaluated, all the departments were doing their own separate locates. So you'd send a separate person out from every single department to say one property to mark just that utility, water for water, wastewater for wastewater, storm for storm. And so we sent, in essence, 4 different people the same parcel to mark the same locate. Additionally, the electric had it hired out to USIC, so we contracted that out. So we decided to bring it all in. It was more cost effective to send one person to go to that parcel in order to mark all the utilities versus 4 different roll-ups on that parcel itself.
Digger's Hotline is for residential.
Digger's Hotline is for residential and contractors.
We don't use Digger's Hotline for our locating services, correct?
No, Digger's Hotline is the state one call number, so anybody calls 811 to get your property marked, whether you're a resident or a contractor itself.
But we can't use them.
Well, it's just it's
Right.
a state statute, so it's an organization that puts it together that we have to follow. So
Okay.
the utilities are required by state statutes to locate those facilities once that digger's ticket is called in.
Okay.
Yep, so it's a portal that's utilized for anybody to get everything underground marked so it doesn't get hit.
So our utility locator and Digger's Hotline are, you know, they work in tandem. You know, it's not like one does the other's job kind of thing. I
Yeah,
mean,
Digger's-
if we're using Digger's Hotline, doesn't mean we can.
No, Digger's Hotline notifies us that we have to go out and mark a parcel.
Okay, perfect.
Well, any other questions or comments?
I get it.
Alderman Rozak.
Yeah, just briefly, I mean, one of the reasons we want to do this too is one of our strategic plan items and something we've been pushing for years in the city is more and more underground power lines. I mean, it's a reason that we as a community in the last storm didn't have any power outages, which Mark noted in the last update, while communities all around us had significant power outages. So when you have more underground lines, you're going to need to do more locates when you do digs and you put in roads, so.
And there's a lot of development going on.
Yeah,
It needs a lot
and
of
the
local-
develop, yeah, and at some point, I mean, I think we need to be, we're gonna need to be flexible. If the development slows down significantly someday and we don't need this locate person, we need to be told that, you know, this person can be transitioned to another job or eliminated. But right now, I don't see our development slowing down anytime soon.
Yeah, exactly, and just like you're saying, the underground utilities that we have, we're 95% underground for electric lines. That covers over 350 miles of cable, so
That's,
anytime.
I mean, that's a huge deal. So when you go to that much underground, you're gonna need more locate, just bottom line.
Alderman Mulder?
So I should have asked this before tonight, I'm sorry. What percentage of this $90,000 roughly is going to hit the general fund versus the utility funds?
What?
Is that the 33 and the 2%? Is that? Just wondering what's actually hitting
The general fund would be,
I don't know the numbers. So it's the
so
fleet
33% would be towards the fleet portion, so of that, there'd be some of the general fund, I guess. That's broken up between the utilities and the fleet.
Okay. And then as I look at this position, I always thinking hiring from within is the best policy for any organization. And this looks like it could be a position that we bring in somebody that, and we can upskill them into one of these other areas. So I hope we really look for a candidate that, you know, wants to expand on their schooling, and we encourage that so that, you know, this is the next mechanic we have, or that this is, you know, the next person that can move up to be the full-time locator or, you know, whatever, take a larger role, because it does seem like it's a generalist. And, you know, the more we can hire from within, the easier it is. It's hard to find people, so.
Alderman Ellis?
All these positions are really important, and I can see the benefit of doing those. I'm getting a little squirmy in my chair here, and the reason they're being is because I'm starting to see that in 24 and 25 and 26, increasing in taxes. And I'm having a serious problem with that. I know that when I run my business, there's a whole bunch of things that I need. And they're important. But if I don't have the dollars and cents to be able to do all of them, but I do maybe one or two, I'm still making some sort of positive effect on my business. I'm a little concerned now. I think it's important that you that we have this extra individual for the purposes of making everyone's life a little easier, in a sense, because some of that workload that maybe you're experiencing or some of your individuals are experiencing can get very stressful. However, there's got to be a point where we have to say enough, maybe for this year, and not say, well, let's just go ahead and buy everything. Because at the end of the day, it could be too much on the taxpayer. Regardless if you're saying it's coming from the utility budget, or it's coming from this budget, or it's coming from the other budget, at the end of the day, it comes from the taxpayer. And that really does concern me at this point. I'm not saying that this is not important. It is. But there's got to be a point.
So just a comment, I think, you know, as we talked about, labor is our biggest expense. Very true. Nobody here, at least when I'm around, we have no anticipation to ever raise taxes again. Now, when you look at these are set up as 4 sustainable labor increase costs that have been built into the budget that'll be sustainable for each year. Now, none of us have a crystal ball, but things will change. And so if something changes, then the council and the mayor, you have to make the policy decisions to adjust to those. But it doesn't mean you just have to increase taxes. So that's kind of what I heard from you, and that's not what I know any of us want to do. But I can tell you with confidence that these 4 positions have looked at it, and the person Lori sits in the corner is so good at making sure that it's something that's sustainable and something that's not a one-time cost.
Can I ask Lori a question? Is that possible?
You bet. Come on up, Lori.
Lori? You're on The Price is Right. So, my concern is we're going to go ahead and let's assume that each one of these positions is accepted. What is the ramification to that for the taxpayer, for the person out there that's maybe watching something on television right now? And we need to be transparent about this. I mean, if, you know, because we hire him at X right now, next year it's going to be X plus 1, and then the year after it's going to be X plus 2, and the year is, so their cost of living is going to continually increase, and we have to be able to sustain that.
And the way we do that with a new employer, with all the employees that we have right now, and the only way we can do that is through net new construction. And then, of course, with the shared revenue increase this next year, the government is encouraging us to spend those dollars on public safety and public works. So Mark and I will submit to the mayor and the budget that the public works person would come from that extra shared revenue. The amount on this for the general fund is quite small for this one. So really your tax effect on all of the positions that you're looking at tonight really is the public works person, and then a few $1,000s of the locating person. So yeah, we're looking at that when we're putting it together. Is there enough funding there available? That's why we're bringing it forward to you, because it is, and it's sustainable at this point. The nice thing about the shared revenue increase, this is the first time I get to tell you, yeah, you can actually spend that on operations, because we'll get it every year. Most of the time you hear me saying, you can't do that, because it's one-time money. This is sustainable funds, and it's being used for the correct purpose.
So I'm hearing from the mayor that nobody, and including myself, I don't want to raise taxes because I have to pay them.
I understand.
Okay.
You know,
So-
what we'll present to you is a levy.
Let me
that
finish, please.
The levy
Let-
will
let
have
me-
the net new
Can
construction
I
in it,
finish?
and nothing more.
Can I finish? Thank you.
I'm sorry.
My concern is, as you just stated, that the individual, if he is or she is approved, will be coming from the levy? Where's
From the
that going to be
state
coming?
shared revenue is what we're planning on, yes.
Okay, now
So it's not levy.
the state shared revenue is something we get from the state.
Correct, it's not levy dollars.
Okay, so are we going to be using any levy dollars for any of these positions if they are approved? That's a yes or a no answer.
Okay, so the answer would be yes for the fleet portion of the locator.
I'm sorry, ma'am, you're not allowed to speak, I'm sorry.
Because I wasn't. Ma'am,
Ma'am.
but that's the question I was going to ask.
Well, we're
Okay.
coming to your question, but I'm
Right.
sorry, we can't have comments.
That's the question. See, we're up here for you. Okay? Going forward, that next year and the year after and the year after that, when that shared revenue goes away, they say it's not supposed to. When that shared revenue goes away, where is that money going to come from?
You know, Alderman Ellis, that's when we group together and relook at our budget, because the truth is, we cannot raise taxes more than net new construction. It doesn't matter what our needs are. We're not allowed to raise taxes more than net new construction.
Now, when
And
you
at the
say
end of the
net
day-
new construction, you're referring to the new building that is going on now.
Correct.
So that's the Olympia project, that is all these other projects that are going on. As long as we have those projects that are in the works, we have the ability to do that.
Correct, and we have the ability to raise the amount of net new construction, which is a percentage and is then split over a greater population. That's how it is set up at the state, and that's the rules we have to follow. You can't even vote to increase taxes. We're not allowed to.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. There was education for myself and those individuals that were here. Thank you.
Alderman Rozak.
These are really modest changes, and Kevin, I'm kind of surprised, because you're using the argument against the locator that I used against the marketing intern, and yet voted for the marketing intern, but apparently don't want to vote for the locator, so I'm confused.
I didn't say I wasn't going to vote for the locator. I had questions. And those
Well,
questions, for the most part,
the
were dealing with the fact that I want to make sure that I'm not going to,
Let's,
as an older
let's
person.
move on.
No, we're fine. We're just having a little conversation here.
Well,
As an older
But
person.
it hasn't been approved.
okay?
Alderman Ellis, if you would please stop.
Yeah.
Okay, you
My-
want
my
to
point-
finish, Alderman Rozak?
Yeah, my point was just, the same point I made about potentially losing the ability from the government for the room tax is the same argument you're using on this, which is we may lose the shared revenue. The shared revenue has been voted on by the legislature, just like the use of the room tax. So you could lose conceivably either one of those, but we're not dealing with eventualities, we're dealing with what we have right here, right now. These changes we're making are very modest and have almost zero effect on levy. Even the marketing intern, as much as I didn't want to do the marketing communication person, it's actually putting money back into the levy. So it's really not a fiscally bad move. I don't think we need the position, but fiscally, it's not a bad move for the city. So none of these things are going to have any legitimate effect moving forward, is my position.
Alderman Ellis, do you want to comment?
Yeah, I'm not going to defend myself. I never have and I never will. I just wanted to go ahead and make sure I educated myself enough so whatever I vote, I can rest my head at night knowing I did the right thing, or I feel as though I did the right thing. Period. You can move on.
Alderman Shellpepper.
Yeah, I guess the only comment I had on the whole conversation that took place is the allocation of the shared revenue dollars without kind of more inclusion of the council on that. That's something I've raised, multiple times. What's the dollar amount, the increase that we're getting in shared revenue?
440.
That's in addition, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. So, and then this position itself, again, off the top of my head, what was it again that we're spending out of that? 30. Hopefully, we're going to spend the majority of the rest of that on roads, because, that's, that is also a public safety piece. That's something I've heard, multiple people on the council say that should be a priority. So I'm happy to support this position as well, but hopefully we'll have some more inclusion and conversation on the allocation of the shared revenue dollars.
I'd like to entertain a motion.
So moved.
Rozak, second.
Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Alderman Rozak. Alderman Altman Cloth. Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
Alderman Shell Pepper.
Aye.
Alderman Maroney.
Aye.
On to our next item, consider act on the reclassification of the purchasing and project coordinator position 2024. Mr. Posnick.
All right, this is for the position reclassification request for the utility department's purchasing and project coordinator position. This is done to ensure the
Can you say
position
that
is
again,
properly
please?
compensated. Sorry. This is allowable per employee handbook, and the request does have merit, as the position is spending 40% more time on purchasing and project coordination. A direct result of current and future inventory challenges. We now have a better and functional fleet operations, doing more things in-house, growth of the utility, and software and process implementation improvements. In addition, the market wages for a similar position have increased to approximately $72,000. We reviewed the request and sent it to Carlson Detman Consultant. That's the firm that is responsible for our pay plan. They came back with a recommendation of taking it from grade 10 in the office support pay schedule, and they recommended grade 9 or grade 10. Grade 9 is a hair below market, and we don't pay below market, so to be consistent with what we've done with everybody in the past is we're recommending it to go to grade 10. This affects the utility fund for approximately $3,321. So that's it.
Questions, comments for Mr. Posnick? Like to entertain a motion?
So moved.
Second, Mulder.
Any further questions, comments? Call roll, please.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Altman Cloth.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
Alderman Shell Pepper.
Aye.
Alderman Maroney.
Aye.
Thank you.
Under Public Services, consider act on Resolution 23-R3149 awarding design engineering services contract for the Oz Plaza improvements. Mr. Herzog.
Yeah, thank you. So the item I got here before you is directly related to our Oz Plaza. This is the preparation that I'm proposing. We utilize our city engineer for basically developing a design and plans to allow this project to move forward. As the Oz Plaza has been in talk for some years, and with the park becoming an official city park this spring, and trying to move this forward in preparation for next year, it's necessary to get some plans in place so that we can start a design and bid this out for construction and get this built. So this is kind of a similar concept of how we handled the engineering component on designing the sanitary sewer improvements along the Oconomowoc Parkway, where we utilized our city engineer, Rupert Milkey, in support of getting the design together, survey, and some of their technical staff, and utilizing some of our city staff currently too, to kind of work back and forth with a relationship with them. So what I've done is I kind of laid out what a full design proposal would come from Rupert Milkey on the left hand of the table, with a lot of the common tasks that we've been given. And then on the right side is more of an offsetting similar cost or what the city can provide. That would be kind of our relationship on how we would do this. One of the big components that Rupert Milkey has offered is with the nature of this project. They've offered to donate the first $10,000 of engineering services towards this to offset some of those costs. So a full design proposal is looking at around $27,000, $28,000. If you would consider a donation of $10,000, the design would be about $17,500, and with the work out of the city staff, I believe we could reduce that down to about $9,000. Again, this is more or less a not to exceed type contract agreement we would have with them. Doesn't mean that it'll be this amount.
Mr. Herzog, compliments to you and Mr. Kane on really trying to decrease some of these engineering costs and doing it in this fashion. This is the second time that I remember of working towards this, and I think as we grow as a community, there are more opportunities for us to do this in the future. Yeah, questions or comments from Mr. Herzog? Like to entertain a motion, please?
So moved, and I'd like to make this the final reading.
This is a resolution, you don't need to.
Second, Altman Cloth.
Any further discussions or comments? Call roll, please.
Alderman Rozak?
Aye.
Alderman Altman Cloth?
Aye.
Alderman Ellis?
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg?
Aye.
Alderman Mulder?
Aye.
Alderman Shell Pepper?
Aye.
Alderman Maroney?
Aye.
On the Plan Commission, this was the first reading from our public hearing. It's consider act on ordinance 23-01050, amending Chapter 20 of the City of Oconomowoc Municipal Code pertaining to floodplain zoning. First reading. And Mr. Gallo?
Thank you, Mayor. We did give a presentation on this. We held a public hearing. No one spoke. I just wanted to remind you about that it is the first reading, and then there was some suggested changes here that if you could include that in your motion, that would be appreciated.
Questions or comments from Mr. Gallo? Mr. Shellpepper?
My main question, Cliff Notes version, are there going to be residents of our city that are impacted by this ordinance update? I mean, that's what, I'm most interested in.
No.
Okay.
Like to entertain a motion?
So moved. I'd like to make this the final reading.
So waive the first reading?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, okay, Jason just told us that we needed to approve subject to the two changes on page 32 and 38 as presented. It's right in front of us. So I think you should amend the motion or withdraw the motion and approve it as he's directed us.
With his recommendations.
And waiving the
Did you get
second
that,
reading.
Kevin?
I do, and I'll do that.
Okay. So we have a motion with the recommended changes presented by Mr. Gallo. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Any further questions or comments? Call roll, please.
Alderman Rozak?
Aye.
Alderman Altman Cloth?
Aye.
Alderman Ellis?
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg?
Aye.
Alderman Mulder?
Aye.
Alderman Shell Pepper?
Aye.
Alderman Maroney?
Aye.
Thank you.
On to our next item, consider act on approving the 2023 updates to the City of Oconomowoc Strategic Plan. Ms. Sullivan Murray.
So this is just the last step in your packets. I provided the finalized version of the plan that we've been working on over the last couple of months. It just includes the updates. It got rid of the crossed out stuff. So this should be the final version. I'm looking for approval of this version tonight. The next steps really are for me to update the website with the newer version, and that, the departments will be providing council with updates on the plan. We would look to renew this again annually. So next May or so to take a look where we're at, what needs to be added, what needs to come out, to keep it a living plan that we're working with every year. Thanks.
Questions or comments? Like to entertain a motion?
So moved, Altman Cloth.
Second, Ellis.
Any further comments? Call roll, please.
Alderman Rozak?
Aye.
Alderman Altman Cloth?
Aye.
Alderman Ellis?
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg?
Aye.
Alderman Mulder?
Aye.
Alderman Shell Pepper?
Aye.
Alderman Maroney?
Aye.
On to staff reports. We don't have any formal ones, but Mr. Duffy, can you explain this to the council, please? Because these are on your desk.
One of the suggestions from the Tourism Commission as we continue to try to get information out there was QR codes to bring people directly to events. So you'll see these being distributed. You can see them on the guide boxes that we have around the lake, different areas throughout the community. Because again, that's been something we continue to do as we transition from a city website to a tourism website. Everything moved over there from events. Just another easier way to be able to provide seamless information to the community when they're visiting or residents to be able to access them.
Thank you. On to any comments or reports from Alderman? Oh, that went fast. Alderman Maroney, you're in the seat.
You'll move.
Fat finger over there.
No, I was just going to mention, we got the Oconomowoc Festival of the Arts this weekend, so it's going to be
Great.
another great weekend. I
And
just
good,
wanted to
and
mention
great
that.
weather.
Super.
Hopefully weather.
Alderman Mulder.
Yeah, I would like to thank Chief and Jason and Mark for help with the Prairie Creek Ridge subdivision. If you haven't driven by that subdivision, if you just go down towards Piggly Wiggly and look to the left, you can't even begin to see it. It goes back for 3/4 of a mile right now, and that's only halfway there. The pickleball courts are busy all the time. You've got the church and church school now, and you have Meadowview there, and the traffic patterns are developing. And the residents have been not feeling safe, whether the speed tests show that there's not huge concerns there, but people have not been feeling safe there. And so we've taken some measures that aren't done in other neighborhoods, some crosswalks, and some stop signs we've evaluated. And I just really appreciate that, because it's the last 3 months working with that group has been the most I've worked with any resident group since in my 3.5 years. And it means a lot that you guys listen and, think about it, not just from what have we done everywhere else, but what are these residents feeling and what's going on in their neighborhood? Because there was becoming infighting within the neighborhood over some of these issues on things that we hadn't yet addressed. So I just really want to appreciate, I know I was a bit of a pain on that in their behalf. I probably will come back, and now they are complaining about the signs that are in their yards marking where the crosswalks are. So it will never end. If you're listening from Prairie Creek, sorry, live with the signs. But thank you.
Yep. Other comments from Alderman? Alderman Rozak.
So mine is a little less fun, and I'd like everyone just to bear with me on this. I went and talked to the Park and Recs Department a couple days ago about the results of the regatta. And I was curious how that went. Apparently not well. There were multiple conditions in the agreement that they violated. They objected to paying the full launch fee despite agreeing to it here at the council floor. They violated our alcohol policy in the community center and have now been fined $500 for the violation of that policy. They've treated our staff with disrespect, both the lifeguards and the folks actually in the building. Some of the other things they did was leave a mess on the patio, not take their garbage back, which was part of the deal. They did not empty the garbage cans as requested. They blocked boats from launching on several occasions, and the list goes on and on. They still got a sweetheart deal on the rent too, which I wasn't aware of when we approved this. But part of that sweetheart deal on the rent they were paying to the community center, which by the way, we still owe $3 million for, was that they would help clean up and take their own garbage and do some of those things. They refused to do that. They refused to comply with the request to stop drinking on the site, which is not allowed. We have a vendor, because we don't own a liquor license, and these folks were still drinking on the site even after being asked to stop drinking. Just a few other things that occurred. They propped open the doors in the community center all day on Monday when asked to close the doors to not let the air conditioning out and the flies, kind of like what you say to a 5-year-old in your house. They said okay, but then continued to prop them open despite our requests. Lifeguards had to shut down the launch because people could not launch the boats because the boats were being tied up everywhere and were clogging the launch for our regular citizens in the city. These folks also parked their boats and trailers in the lawn, their personal vehicles in launch parking spots, and other basically inappropriate behavior. Probably the saddest part of the one was the lifeguards reported that there was an accessibility challenged person that came down to use a canoe. And because they had blocked the area so poorly and would not move, it took this person 20 minutes to get in the canoe so he could enjoy the lake. I think the folks, I've got other emails and stuff here too where they're complaining about having to deal with the council, having to pay the full launch fee still. They're complaining about paying the $500 fine for the alcohol, which is illegal. I think they owe the city and our staff at the community center an apology. And I really, especially if I'm not on council next year, encourage this council not to approve any permit with them in May for their May regatta. What I heard from the city staff, I think we should have a follow-up, and I think we should have a full report from city staff. But the things I've heard and the things that are in this, the emails and the information that I've received are very troubling, disturbing, and frankly, we should not allow this in our community.
Thank you for those comments. I was not aware. I was out of town. Not an excuse, but we'll definitely investigate that, after the happy comments, but those are just as important. I think what's also important, just kind of moving forward, and please take this in the constructive manner I'm trying to bring it forward. If these things are happening, get a hold of Mark right away so he knows, so that we can also do some investigation on the city side, because then we can follow up on that a little quicker. So
I just heard about
sometimes-
it like 2 days ago.
Oh, okay.
So
I thought, okay, that's fine.
it's not, I haven't been sitting on this by any
Okay.
means.
And I didn't insinuate that you were, but I just, whenever there's something going on that you're not happy, call Mark, because that's really important to have happen, so you're welcome.
Well, you're not happy with city stuff.
But thank you, Alderman Rozak, for bringing that forward, because what you've described is completely unacceptable. I agree. Any other comments from the alderman? Okay, from the mayor, I'm going to be a happy one. As you all know, I am really bad at notifying you about parades, about walking in the parade if you want as elected officials. It's something kind of low on my list, and I usually do last minute. So in front of you, you have a save the date flyer that was put together in about 2 minutes by our intern. Basically, I asked her, I said, just put a flyer really quick to save the date, and we're going to try to have a city float. Part of the impetus of that city float is that we're not going to spend money, so don't worry about that. What we're going to do is try to help promote the Wizard of Oz and the 150th anniversary coming up. And so there's some things moving forward on that. Another comment for you, something I didn't realize, and I would like to just publicly thank Stapleton Realty and the whole group of workers there. I never realized that Light Up the Lake, where they have the fireworks, they have the boat parade, and they have the Legion band play, which is this coming Saturday, that was done privately. And that was done through Stapleton Realty. Bonnie, who's really driven and done a lot of the work, has taken on some other roles. So another group of people have taken on that role to make sure it happens again. And I'm pretty sure I know we have 5 confirmed boats. I saw another one look like it was being built. So I think we'll have a nice parade that'll only go around once. And it's amazing how many people, and that's what makes our community great, how many people do stuff and you never know. I always thought the Festival of the Arts did it. I had no clue until I became mayor, and then you learn all of these different roles. But a big thank you to that group, because in the group that's taken over to keep moving that forward, you'll see a few things posted there. The other thing I want to just inform you, we have 2 big events, as we mentioned, 2024 and 25. The Wizard of Oz 85th showing will be next summer, next August. And so we've put an ad hoc committee together to start the planning for that. We'll send out via Mark's Friday email who's on each committee and what they're doing. We try to keep fairly tight committees and not have too many people until we start figuring out where it's going to go. And then we anticipate those committees will grow, and people will be segmented into different parts of what we're doing. 2 committees, because we've also formed the 150th, our sesquicentennial committee. They have met. Now, the point person for that is Christy Weber. Christy Weber is a point person for both of those things. And so this is something, too, I can promise you the marketing communication person will be very involved in as well. So it's something that doesn't hurt really getting involved, and that's why I made sure you know that we're going to be walking in the parade if you want to. Do we have to publicly notice that?
No.
Okay, good.
Yeah, only 3 of us, though, can be there, so
Yeah.
I'm out. You guys go ahead and take it.
So if you would like to help with the float, please contact me. And I have no idea what we're going to do, but we have plenty of time to plan. So another just quick personal note, have really enjoyed the last few months working with council. You guys are having great debates, bantering things back and forth, and I respect everyone here because you're being independent and telling people what you think, and that's what you were elected to do. And my hat's off to all of you, and I think you're doing a great job to do some cool things for the city. Whether I agree or not with your votes, it's immaterial. I'm really confident that you're trying to do the right thing for our residents, and that's cool. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.